stuff is too?
No.
All right, we'll just pause. You go ahead and then I'll help you if you need it.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't pay attention to. I don't see it on the bottom, right?
Yep. Nope. No, no. Got you. Do you need anything? I just scooched my thing off the screen, so
Okay.
should be good.
Just leave it right there.
All right, Sherry, you're up.
I'd like to call, can everybody hear me? Okay. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Conservation Commission for June 6th, 2023. Commissioner Crook, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Parati,
Present.
Commissioner McCarthy,
Present.
Commissioner Sarno,
Here.
Chairman Dutzy,
Here.
Commissioner Widu,
Present.
Commissioner Cook,
Here.
Commissioner Crook is here. Yeah, they have a quorum.
And absent tonight, we have Commissioner Martin.
Commissioner
Brendan Martin. Okay. Thank you. Okay, first up on the agenda is old business, and this is GOV Environmental Services on behalf of the City of Nashua regarding the disc golf course at Roby. And is there somebody to speak? Yes. Okay.
Thank
And
you.
yes, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Good evening, Chair Dutzy and Commissioners. My name is Lisa Foto. I serve as Director of Public Works. This project is a grassroots effort by residents to bring disc golf to Nashua. I hadn't even heard of disc golf until I was handed a petition with over 200 signatures asking for it to be built. Since then, I've heard from many residents excited for the potential of disc golf in Nashua. This is what we as public servants should be doing, listening and delivering projects that our residents want, improving their quality of life. There are over 60 disc golf courses in New Hampshire, 2 right in our neighboring city, Manchester. It is a great sport for everyone, from kids to senior citizens. There are so few things that families can do here for free. This course would get people out in beautiful wooded area to enjoy a part of Nashua many don't even know exists. Roby is not a neighborhood park. It is enjoyed by residents throughout the city. We are not clear cutting. We are widening paths and opening areas so that disc golfers, runners, walkers, snowshoers, and cross-country skiers can enjoy. This project was approved by the Board of Public Works in August of 2021. The city has partnered with Rotary West, who will be funding most of the project. We were lucky enough to get disc golf world champion Avery Jenkins to design the course. The disc golf course will be run by the Division of Public Works, Parks and Recreation Department. Disc golf is very low impact to the environment. There are courses that have been built not only in parks but on conservation land. It is very safe. I know of no serious injuries from any of the disc golf courses in New Hampshire. There will be extensive signage, and disc golfers will yield to pedestrians. The yield to pedestrians rule is something that works, as witnessed in every disc golf course in the state. There were clearly mistakes made in the early stages of this project, and we acknowledge and regret that. As soon as concerns were brought to our attention, we paused, hired a wetland scientist, and developed a plan to move forward with the guidance and input of the Conservation Commission and DES. This project will not harm the environment, just the contrary. It will provide a place for all residents to enjoy the beauty of Roby Park. We have a draft maintenance and invasive species plan and a draft set of rules for your review and input, which you'll hear about in a little bit. But first, I would like to ask Dickie Smart to present some more details about the project, because it's been some time since we've gone over this. So he will do that at this time.
Thank you.
Dickie?
All right.
Please, please introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Richard Smart, 159 Searles Road here in Nashua. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about disc golf, where this whole project came from, and why we're here tonight. So what is disc golf? I won't have you read this. This is an eye test. It's known as Frisbee golf in some parts of the country, but it's a flying disc sport. It's much like golf, played just like you play golf. We play on a much smaller area than golf is played, but we do keep track of number of throws, and we want to be as close to par as possible, just like golf. Disc golf courses, the actual activity of disc golf is considered passive activity when it comes to park and recreation. It's a great fit in a lot of parks, conservation areas, and land that's otherwise just not usable for recreational purposes. So in the US, there are over 6,500 disc golf courses. There are cultural and sport ambassadors all over the country. We have about 3 to 5 million players that enjoy the game. There are 32 documented courses in the state of New Hampshire, 60 if you include all of the other courses, private and otherwise. We do share space and coexist with park users. We use areas like Roby Park, and we turn them into havens for outdoor escape. There are other places right around us that have been used in the same manner, and we have folks that now feel more comfortable and safe out in the park that they know that there's disc golfers using it. So why now, and why in the city of Nashua? We are surpassing pickleball as we speak as the most popular and growing sport in the country. So this growth is not going to go away, and we want to create a relationship with not only Parks and Recreation, but with the folks on this commission to better develop these parks and put them into places where it makes sense. So there's a lot of talk about Greeley Park. We already have a disc golf course. It's not a disc golf course. It's a practice facility. It was an Eagle Scout project that was completed in the late 1990s. We've taken care of it. We've repaired it a bunch of times. We use it to teach people how to play the sport. We do share the area with some other folks. It has really been underutilized of late because there's just no real use of it because it's not a course. So what did we do? We started to engage our local government. We were told by Park and Rec to get signatures, engage the mayor. I was told to speak to Alex from DPW. He had started this work a couple years before I did. We presented the petition to the mayor. We've been actively promoting the sport of disc golf in the city. I think we're at like 550, 560 signatures now. Lisa, as she told you, got the petition. Avery came, he's a professional disc golfer, presented to the Board of Public Works. The project was approved. We got funding from Rotary, and the rest is kind of history. We've been engaging with our local community. We've used that donation to fund most of this project. It's safe, fun, it's healthy, it gets people out of the house. I myself have benefited from the sport. I've lost a lot of weight. I've gotten things in my life under control. Nashua PAL has a disc golf program that's growing by leaps and bounds. It'd be lovely to have a place for them right in their own city. Inner city youth have a hard enough time getting to places within their own city, never mind getting outside. So as I said, Avery came, designed a course. Having someone like Avery Jenkins design a course for you would be like having someone like Jack Nicklaus design a golf course for you. He is at the top of our sport. He is probably 1 or 2 as far as course designers go in our sport. And he came here and thought this was a wonderful spot to put a course and laid down quite the path. This is a slide that Avery put together explaining how he does his course design. Number one thing about professional course design is that it does ensure the priority of safety for all park users, not just disc golfers. We want to keep the course flowing, but we also want to have a variety of shots. And at the same time, we want to display the beauty of Roby Park. We want to put it on display for people to see. So what does a course involve for actual installation? You put 18 tee pads and 18 baskets. It's a 2-foot hole in the ground that the basket is mounted into. The concrete is poured. and the basket is there. This is it. Everything else that we're doing, as Lisa mentioned, we're widening fairways, we're making the park safer, removing trees that otherwise are going to fall, and keeping that work to a minimum. So course and park maintenance, again, Lisa talked about this. It will be headed by Nashua Parks. What does it entail, keeping track and keeping care of a disc golf course? Removing fallen limbs and brush, general landscaping and cleanup. There's not a whole lot to it. At the courses in Manchester and Pelham, once a quarter, we all get together as a group, we clean the course. There's not a lot of trash to clean out there, mostly just leaves and fallen limbs. That is it for me, and I think I'll be handing over to Brendan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Brendan Quigley from GOV Environmental Services. Glad to be here finally to discuss this. It's, as you know, it's been out there for a while. Lisa gave a brief history, which my involvement began in right about the time when the city paused and correctly, sought to reevaluate the plan, which of course involved me delineating the wetlands on the property, which is what appears on the plan, but also to, I think, advise them on some changes to make the layout as minimally impactful to wetlands as possible. And I'll get to what that was in just a minute. But because there is a difference between this type of project and impacts that we're usually used to talking about with the Conservation Commission, and there was some photos of what this actually entails. I just wanted to make the distinction between this project is a little more than the trails and the basket and the tee. And of course, there is some widening and some tree cutting along the fairways for clearance, obviously, to throw the discs. The course will largely utilize the existing trail system in the park. One of my suggestions was that some of the holes be adjusted so that they cross the narrowest width of wetlands possible, and avoided doing any more large-scale swaths of cutting through the buffer and through the wetlands. And that would make use of the existing trails. There are a couple of crossings necessary. That's been reduced down to just 6 areas, and each one of those will serve more than one fairway. So it's less than would be required if you built a loop trail that accessed every hole with its own crossing. So we ended up with just 6 crossings, which are shown on the plans, which I could probably get going here. Sorry, I should have asked about that before I started talking. Let's just start with maybe the overall plan. There we go. So this is an overall view. There's more detailed sheets in the rest of the plan set. And you can see where the fairways are laid out, generally, symbolized by these lines, and the existing trails as well as the wetlands. You'll note that 8 of those fairways and tees are located entirely outside of wetlands and buffers. And that was one notable change last spring. The remaining 10 do cross wetlands or are otherwise require some buffer impact. So the remaining 10. These are the ones where work was began last spring, and those will remain in the configuration which they were planned. The one hole in a particularly sensitive area associated with the disturbance you see on the plan here, that was moved entirely due to the fact that it would have required significantly more impact to actually construct it. So in total, we're talking about roughly 74 trees, 48 of which are associated with when the work was began last spring. So an additional 29 for the remainder of the course. All the tees and baskets are located outside of buffer with one exception at hole 10. And for those of you who are familiar with the park, this is sort of the juncture of a number of different trails right in this area. It's largely open to begin with. And that is just barely on the edge of the buffer to that wetland. So with respect to the work, it's essentially just the tree cutting. There's a very minimal amount of excavation to set the baskets. There's no grading or large-scale disturbance associated with this work. The course is planned to make use of the terrain and not to change it. So really, the impacts are essentially just for access. And like I mentioned, most of the trails that are being used for the project are already trails that exist in the park. The additional 6 crossings, they're in the narrowest spots. They don't cross the large areas of wetland. And those will just be trail-type bridges, which it won't have any impact to the wetland at all, really. In some of these cases, especially along the main thread of the stream, the upstream portion, there's enough grade on the channel there for the bridge to just go completely over without anything at all. Some of the others might have your typical trail-type wooden supports that are placed on the surface in the wetland. And there's some details of what those bridges will look like in the back of the plan set. So, in addition to the application which describes the impacts and some of the nature of the work that I just discussed, we also submitted an invasive species management plan. Again, because of the nature of the work and because Robbie Park is fortunately not very thick with a lot of invasive species, there's, I'd say, in comparison to most work that we'd usually deal with, there's very little risk of stuff being spread. But that would come basically in 2 areas, and I've tried to write the the management plan to sort of address these areas. And that would be if there is any, generally, if there's any material brought on to the site, and this could be in the context of regular trail maintenance, not even related to the disc golf proposal, that material be inspected and certified free of any invasive plant material, particularly the more dangerous
Can you repeat
ones.
that, Mr. Quigley? I didn't quite get it.
So most important, I think, is that if there were any material brought onto the property, say for surfacing a trail, which could very well not even be related to the disc golf, that be inspected and certified to be free of invasive plant material. The other potential avenue for spread of invasive species, and there are some on the property. Large, I think this is best described as what you typically in a lot of woods in southern New Hampshire. The woody invasive, there's winged unimus, glossy buckthorn, some oriental bittersweet, bush honeysuckle. Those are the ones that come to mind. When equipment moves from one area to another, that it be cleaned in the work area before leaving, so there's you absolutely limit the possibility that invasive plant material, in this case, would almost certainly be just the seeds, isn't spread to other areas. There's some other suggestions in there related to ongoing maintenance, and this would be limited in this case to what would typically, I think, be done by the Parks Department to maintain the park. And if there is brush that needs to be cleared from an authorized trail crossing, for instance, wetland crossing, that material either be left in the area if appropriate, or removed from the site and disposed of properly. Avoid making brush piles in areas that may not have those invasive species in them. I did not do a comprehensive survey of everywhere on the in Robbie Park, but I don't recall seeing any of the sort of the really bad ones, which I'd say most commonly are the Japanese knotweed and Phragmites. So I wouldn't expect those to be a problem at all. Most importantly, I think just making sure that nothing comes onto the site, either in material or in equipment that's operated elsewhere, would be the most important and effective way to keep things as they are. There's also had some recommendations in the management plan, not specifically related to invasive species, but more along the lines of the rules of the course, education of residents who will be using the course on the appropriate way to behave, and this would extend from common courtesies to other users, which has been discussed a bit, but also the sensitive nature of the wetlands, and that although you are you're lucky to have the course if it should be approved, and it makes use of the landscape, which includes the wetlands, but those are out of bounds areas, and the discs that may end up there need to be retrieved without actually tromping through the wetland. And I think that'll probably be one of the more important aspects to maintaining low impact footprint for the course.
Are we holding our questions?
I'll back up just one thing. I would like to also mention that, as Lisa pointed out, some of the work was started early. One of my earliest duties on this job was, and the city had done an excellent job already of stabilizing those areas. I had gone back subsequently and looked at those, and there was absolutely no problems with what was done in terms of ground disturbance, erosion, or any of those problems that might develop from that kind of thing. So, and I expect that's still the case, though I haven't been back there since last fall. That's all I had planned for comments, for presentation. Welcome to go through some of the detailed plans. They're essentially just closer versions of the overall.
Okay,
And
we'll
or,
take,
of
we'll
course,
take
taking
questions from, you'll take questions from the commissioners?
Yes, absolutely.
Commissioner Cook?
I see on the plans that there's some marking indicating where there's going to be clearing of understory, but I don't think I saw any marking of where the trees are that are going to be removed. Is that correct? Or have been?
So the trees, each, maybe I can zoom.
I saw where it gave you a number, but like the actual physical location of each tree, is that indicated at all?
That is not indicated on the plan.
Do you know how many are within the buffers?
As opposed to in the wetlands.
Or,
It's-
yeah,
It's
yeah.
70, so it's altogether, project-wide, what was done already and what would be needed to construct the course going forward is 74. And due to the changes that were made and how the course was laid out, those fairway sections that go through wetland and buffer are going to be much narrower than what any of you might have seen had you gone to the park in last spring and seen the wide clearings. So those areas have been done. They are stable, but the intent going forward is to clear minimal trees, only as necessary to provide a playable line through there, not to create a perfectly clear fairway area. So that additional number is 29. Like most of them were actually done initially. And no, they're not, each individual tree is not on the plan, but we did have the surveyor count those, and they might have located. There's a bit of a difficulty because the trees were no longer there. Well, it's counting stumps. But we could see if that would, if that's something the commission would like to see, I think we could probably.
Mr. Quigley, the trees are marked at this point for,
Oh, for the new ones?
yeah, for the new ones, are they flagged?
That is a good question. I admit that I'm not sure they have been flagged.
Okay, because I think probably the next step, we would not be taking a vote tonight, and we would, I know some of the commissioners have viewed the site when there were code violations, but the entire commission has not had the chance to do a site walk, so that would be the next thing that we would want to do. So if the trees were flagged, that would really help, and also indicate where the footpaths, the 6 footpaths, bridges are going to be. And I assume from the pictures that in some of the designated wetlands where there isn't a bridge, that those boards are already laid down according to the pictures. Are they still there so that we would be able to see them?
Yeah, so there's a couple of areas, and I don't have the benefit of knowing what exactly was there before, but one of them, so this is both the first and the last hole, the first and the 18th. Your Robbie Park playing field, playgrounds is to the left here. And this is the main trail in. There is a section of trail that had, I understand, always crossed that area, and there was boards and such put down to facilitate getting through there without getting your feet wet. They were put back last time I was there.
Okay.
And, there's some other crossings on, let's see if I can find some of these. When you see trails going across the wetland on these plans.
Yeah, I believe 10 was one of the ones that I had questions about, because there's
Yeah.
no bridge, but it looks like it's in the designated wetland, so I think that's maybe a flush walkway or something.
Yeah, that is, it's an existing trail
Mhm.
in this area here. So there's a rather wide, I think there's a couple of trails that kind of meet in that area. What ended up happening there is when I flagged the wetlands, I flagged over the trail because there was wetland indicators. It's still a trail though. So these are the kind of things we can more easily look at on the ground, obviously. But in general, if the plans do not indicate a proposed crossing, that crossing of the wetland is already there.
Oh.
Yeah. And there's a few of those. If you went for a loop walk through Robbie Park right now, you'd be using those crossings.
Okay. We would just
Yes.
want to make sure that the preparation is such that we could get the best visual view of what the course is going to look like in terms of the wetland crossings. So flagging the trees and having some indication, of where the 6 crossings are going to be. And then whatever is there, we know that would be existing, with the existing trails. So I think that would make our site walk visit most productive. Okay.
I think that's easy. We could possibly also flag where the baskets are going to be located.
Okay.
Although due to the length of these, all the fairways, and this was another important change, not only are the crossings across the narrowest points, but the fairways that needed to cross wetlands do so as close to perpendicular as possible. So we don't have a situation where they go really along a buffer or a wetland. So what that ends up creating is the baskets and the tees in most cases are well outside of, and if you're familiar with Robbie Park, well uphill of some of the wetland areas.
Okay. Commissioner Sarno, you had a question?
I do. So in addition to the flagging that Commissioner Dutsey asked for, could we mark out the pathways of the fairways themselves, so that we'll have a sense of where those will be? And then I have a couple of questions about the application itself. It calls for 2,200 square feet of wetland to be temporarily impacted. and in parentheses it says temporary restored. I assume, and this could be a bad assumption, that this 2,200 feet is hole 18 and former hole 7. So I just want to confirm that it's correct. And then I also want to ask, what does temporary restored actually mean?
So that's just me trying to fit within the confines of the form. You're correct. The temporary wetland impact was the result of basically equipment access during the initial work, and that occurred on the trail at what is now hole 18. And that's the boards, that's where the area had been laid down. That area was, city personnel had smoothed that area out and mulched the surface and even put up appropriate erosion control to keep that area stable. And that was the case it remained stable last time I was there. So that was one of the areas, and the other one was what is formerly hole 7. And that's in this location here. And again, that was largely related to equipment moving around in that area. And there was previously a hole planned to going through there. That was one of the changes. So in that area too, as far as last time I was back, had pretty much naturalized on its own. It wasn't like excavation type disturbance, it's really just some ruts.
So,
Do you have
just
a follow-up?
I do, yes. Follow-up, in those holes, there were 9 trees removed from former hole 7 and 4 trees removed from 18. Were those trees in the wetland or the wetland buffer?
The short answer is I'm not sure because the trees were not there anymore. What I did was work with the surveyor who identified the stumps that were there.
So the surveyor counted the trees? Is that
Correct.
Was there stumping of trees or shrubs in this area?
No, not intentionally.
What does that, not intentionally means?
Well, of course, I didn't run the excavator, not that I could. You know, in the classic sense, the area was not stumped. I guess I'm only being cautious because there may be, and I don't recall, there may have been a tree or two that was knocked down, by the equipment, but that was not, done in the context of an operation to rip out the stumps, which is usually something you do in preparation for grading, which was never going to happen.
Alex McLean. I actually was the one that
Did
was
you
up
want to
there.
say something, Mr. McLean?
Yes. I feel that I can probably answer some of your questions that detail more to the actual construction and everything that's going on out there. So, your question was trees that were taken down inside of the wetland. There was not a single tree that was removed from within the wetland. Everything that had come down was from the buffer.
Okay, so, thank you for that.
Yep.
When I walked there in October, I saw some trees, maybe not in these 2 holes,
Mm-hmm.
but there were stumps, I should say,
Yes.
that were definitely, in my opinion, in the wetland. And So are you saying that no trees were taken down in the
No,
entire
everything,
property?
once we had the delineation of the wetland and the buffer, that, everything came down from the buffer.
So-
That, anything that were, not all of it came down from the buffer. There was only those trees that came down inside. There was never anything from the wetland itself.
All 48 trees were outside?
Not 48, because we were at 20
It's 48 were done existing.
48 were done?
existing, yes.
So I'm still a little confused. Were those 48 trees all in the buffer?
Yes,
Okay. And we know that because the wetland scientists went back and looked at the stumps and
so,
evaluated that?
so I am the one that did all of the removal of the trees. I personally walked, I have been out there for weeks, months of walking out there. I have a very good grasp on where everything came from.
So you recall taking a tree down that was right on the bank of the stream?
Right on the bank there, possibly. I'd have to be out there to stand and look where you were referring to.
I will walk there and.
Yeah, we can.
Yes.
Okay, so, I don't know if you, I have more
La-
questions?
Last follow-up.
Last follow-up, okay. The application also indicates that 37,630 square feet of buffer is temporarily impacted. And here we have temporary, in parentheses, cutting only. I wonder if you could explain what that means? What does temporary cutting only mean?
So the area, the impacts are characterized in two ways, by number of trees cut and by brush clearing. So that's what that is.
So are we saying that the brush will be allowed to grow back and will not be cut down again?
That is a maintenance question, but that's generally the case. At some point, it will be too high to be able to play, and there'll have to be some maintenance.
So
Okay.
what makes that temporary?
No, I'm sorry, I'm
mean,
going to have to
but
cut you
can
off.
see where I'm going with this.
Yes.
I feel like.
Do
So
any
temp-
do any other commissioners have any, okay, Commissioner Crook?
Were there vernal pools located on the site as well? Because I believe in a previous presentation, there was vernal pools mentioned in the top half.
Yeah, there wasn't a formal vernal pool survey done. I was out there in mid-May. By that time, you know, the croaking was over. I think what I mentioned in my report is that there's really limited potential vernal pool habitat, and it would probably be limited to those,
Yeah, it was in.
these areas up here.
Yeah, I believe like in a wetland delineation report that we had previously.
Yep.
Those were listed as.
That
Vernal
would
pools?
be, they have the character. This is just by observation.
Okay.
I did not put, you know, the waders on and go through there.
Right.
But I think there's a chance that those could support vernal pool habitat.
And then this might be a question for both of you.
Did you want to follow up, Mr. Crook?
Oh, yes, one.
Yes, okay,
follow-up,
follow up.
please. But in a previous conversation that Alex and I had, you mentioned clearing the brush that you were talking about, and so people don't lose their discs and whatnot. And then I feel like in this presentation, I'm hearing that maybe a little bit of both, is that it won't be cleared, or less will be cleared to maintain the trails, like the trails are being narrowed, but will low-lying brush around the holes in outside of the path also be cleared? Because in the report, it says, I believe it says like 34,000 square feet of brush will be removed. Is that already existing or to be removed?
That would be the total. So
Okay.
there's a split somewhere in there. Yeah, 33,000 square feet of buffer.
But in another, it says brush removal specifically.
It's brush cutting.
Okay.
You know, and that would be my characterization of that impact, recognizing that it is an impact under your jurisdiction, is of a temporary nature, in contrast to something like building a road, putting a structure. As far as the frequency of maintenance, clearly, it's not very well defined at this point, and I think we'd be looking to the commission for input on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Cook, did you have a question, or is it answered?
I do have a question. So I see here that with the Natural Heritage Bureau check, there was that one species. It's not a concern because there's not suitable habitat.
Yep.
My question for you is, do you have a level of familiarity with other threatened or endangered plants that are known to exist in wetlands in New Hampshire, such that like while you're out there, you might recognize them if they are there?
Somewhat. A lot of the endangered plants are somewhat diminutive. They're difficult to find, and they're rather specific usually. But you know, I always look for a small world begonia when I'm out because I kind of have a personal interest in seeing it because it kind of comes up a lot, but it doesn't seem like anyone's ever seen it. But, you know, no, when we're doing wetland delineation, we're typically focused on the technical criteria and the general type of wetland. Now, if I was to find myself on the edge of a really special peatland or something of that nature, that would sort of, raise some flags like, well, this is something special. Maybe there is a rare plant that is known to live in these areas, and we should, pay attention to that. While these wetlands are certainly really nice and it's a beautiful park, it's relatively standard, type of wetland system.
Mr. Quigley, one of the things that I was concerned about was the amount of understory and brush that's going to be taken out. Is all of that necessary? I mean, is what you're calculating, is that to clear the fairways? Is that the area that we're talking about? Or does more understory have to be taken on either side? Because the photos that Mr. Smart showed, looked like a pretty clean forested area.
Right.
And I'm not sure that that's a healthy environment. So could you speak to that?
Sure. Well, I've limited familiarity with disc golf courses, but I have seen both the types that are constructed in more clean parks, which might just have just pine trees or fields, and I have seen ones that are constructed in the woods, like this one will be. And they are generally, it's not, the goal is to not create the pictures like you saw where it's completely free of anything. The square footage of impact noted in the application is conservative. It's strictly based on the limit of disturbance that was done last spring,
Okay.
overlaid on the wetland delineation and associated buffer. So, some of those areas, there were a lot of brush was cleared. That's not necessarily going to be the case for these going forward.
Going forward, okay.
So a lot of that
And
disturbance
clearly-
is related to, and while the fairway might require a certain width across the buffer and wetland, that doesn't mean every single shrub in there needs to be cut down.
And clearly, it would be the conservation's preference that the minimum amount of brush and understory would be removed. And would your team be supervising that removal? Or how does that information, how would that information get transferred to the people who are actually using the equipment?
This is, this sort of monitoring theme comes up often, and it's certainly a possibility that the work be conducted, under the supervision of a wetland scientist or a qualified
So
professional.
we might consider that as a stipulation if the project, if there's a favorable recommendation. Yeah, okay. Any other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Crook?
Sorry,
Yeah.
just one question for Alex. Do you happen to know if out of the 37,630 square feet of brush proposed to be removed, I know you removed a lot of bittersweet and invasives when you were there. Do you know how much of that number you've already removed?
I don't.
Okay.
Commissioner,
Thank you.
Commissioner Sarno, you had
Sure.
another question?
Yeah, I went through the call-outs on your drawings and added up the planned undergrowth removal versus the undergrowth already removed, and came up with, for already removed, 33,780, and planned to be removed, 5,050, which suggests to me that most of the undergrowth has already been removed. Is that an incorrect assessment?
I think that's a correct assessment. That's what I was actually trying to say, is that a lot of the area impact that we're referencing in the application was incurred during the initial work, which, and the intent going forward is to have a lighter touch and install in the rest of the course. Because it is my understanding that it's not as necessary, might be desirable to some, to have, a perfectly clear, very wide fairway like that. So there might be some opportunity to drill down on this a little bit more in consulting with the commission and the course designer. I guess I'm recognizing that all the detail that could have been on these plans might not be there. That was sort of we were sort of thinking that, we'd get to those discussions with the commission about
So-
exactly where.
If there, maybe the best tact to take at this point would be to arrange for a site visit so that we could actually see what the area looks like now with any regrowth or whatever, and then hopefully be able to spend enough time at that point to drill down on some of these questions and actually see it in situ. Does that seem reasonable? Okay. Mr. Quigley, what does your schedule look like? This is always the fun part.
Well, I did discuss this with Lisa. My timing is not good. I'll be away 13th through the 26th of this month.
Okay.
So if there's a strong desire to have me there.
Yeah. And Ms. Voto, do you have a time? I mean, you know, my session ends on the 29th, so after the 29th, I'm pretty free. So whatever, you want to get back to us?
If you wanted to set a time.
Okay, and Mr. Quigley, you're going to be back on the 26th, Monday the 26th? Yeah, that's a Monday. How does June 27th look for everybody?
Yeah, I'll be back, but it won't be, I won't be working on Monday, so my earliest availability would be the 27th.
Okay, so, and that's going to be your first day back at work, huh? Probably not a good day.
That's just as well.
Let's see. I could probably do the 28th. Would the 28th be better, or the following week? Yeah, the following week we get into July 4th, but I mean, if you want to do like July 6th, is a good time?
Anything after that 26 is.
Commissioner Whittier?
We need to allow Mr. Quigley time to mark those trees.
Oh,
Yeah, I think we could probably coordinate that in my absence. I'm not sure I'd actually
okay.
mark them.
Well, we could either do the 6th, or we can do the week of the 10th. I mean, your preference, and are we usually, Commissioner Parati, 5:30 is usually good? Okay, so-
5:20, somewhere around there.
Yeah. Okay, so we could meet around, let's say 5:30. And you want to do the 10th, the 11th?
Okay.
Okay,
That's fine.
okay, so let's do Monday, the 10th.
Are we talking July?
Yeah, we're talking July, I mean. Okay, July 10th, 5:30, and we'll meet in the upper parking lot at Roby? Is that the
Yeah, I
best
think
place?
that's the upper park. It's the one that's, yeah, you walk right down the hill, yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. And then hopefully we'll, if everything can be marked off so that we can get a really good shot at it, that would be great.
We can do that.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much. If there's nothing else in terms of the presentation, then we'll open it up for public comment. For those, I'm sorry, yes, Commissioner Cook.
Was anyone going to speak to the draft rules that were in the packet?
The draft of the
Planning.
rules?
Yeah, I think so.
Was anyone?
This golf course.
Yeah, those were the proposed rules for your consideration and input. They're fairly general, two different categories. We could go through everyone if you want, but they basically deal with two categories. One is giving right of way to hikers, behavior on the part, good behavior, and not accessing wetlands, and basically promoting responsible use.
But that's not, the rules of the park or the rules of golf are not within the purview of the Conservation Commission. Okay, I mean, I think if there's any signage that we might recommend, the signage would be related to the care and consideration of the wetland and the wetland buffers?
For instance, at the crossing locations, I envision there'd be something there to remind folks that it's out of bounds.
Right. Yeah, Director Photo, you wanted to say something?
Commissioner, that Karen Bill is here. She was part of the group that developed the rules, so yeah, she might be able to, Karen for a second. But if you had any questions, she might be a good person to.
Yeah, but
To speak to.
the rules are not in the purview of the Conservation
Okay.
Commission. Our jurisdiction is the wetland and the wetland buffer. Yes,
Let me ask you a follow-up on that. So I'm not sure I agree, because the rules do address things like having to use the grabbers to get a Frisbee that goes into the wetlands. And so I would say it does make sense for us to advise on how those rules are laid out.
Well, I mean, if a rule relates to a wetland, yeah, I guess so, but I mean, you don't want them to use a grabber?
No. So I have a question.
Okay,
So
go
I'll just
ahead.
ask my question about the grabbers. So I see that it says that grabbers will be there for players to use. And so I just wanted to understand, what does that actually mean? Like, will the grabbers be at every hole that is near a buffer? Like, how can we be sure
Then
that
I'll turn
people
to
will
that.
have ready access to those grabbers to really make sure they're gonna be using them?
Richard,
Yes, yeah.
again, it's a general understanding and rule of disc golf. We don't enter wetlands and bodies of water. We have grabbers, and those that don't have grabbers don't go in the wetlands.
Each individual golfer carries their own grabber,
For the most part, yeah.
like you do in regular golf?
Absolutely, yep.
So it won't be something that will actually be there for people to
No.
use?
No.
Nope.
In regular golf, you take a ball retriever, everybody has a ball retriever, and when it goes in the wetland, you use the ball retriever. So I mean, so it's the same principle?
Yeah, and this is, and I didn't even know that that was common practice, but I think that we tried to anticipate your concerns relative to general traffic in the buffers and through the wetlands. That is, potentially a significant part of the possible impact,
Yeah.
but also one that we can address.
And
through
clearly,
this
that's a
ordinance.
concern of the commission, so we appreciate that. Thank you.
May I follow up on that?
You can have, yes, one follow-up, Commissioner
So,
Sarno?
I've visited 2 disc golf courses, which obviously doesn't give me a lot of experience with disc golf, but I didn't see anyone, and these both had wetlands, that's specifically why I went there. I did see players there, but no player carrying a disc retrieval implement. And I know exactly what Sherry's talking about, a ball retriever, and I can imagine what this disc retrieval implement looks like, or may look like. I know with golf, golfers, this implement exists, but most don't actually carry it. They go off into the wetland and retrieve the ball. And I assume the same could happen with discs. So that's my concern with these fairways, 10 of them that are crossing wetlands. These wetlands are often dry, so it's not even, to many people, and perhaps to the folks that started the initial development of this course back in December, they perhaps didn't recognize that it was even a wetland to begin with. So I have a lot of concerns about soil compression and vegetation not growing back because folks are following the disc and not following those 6 bridges that are designed to get them over the wetland. I think signs are great, and I appreciate seeing that signage is going to be added, as is indicated in the rules, but I'm very concerned about the impact of folks chasing their discs across these 10 holes that cross streams.
Maybe have a disc golfer respond to that?
Sure.
Would you like to, or you want to? Sure.
Yeah, so I think a couple of things to speak about there is that we often make assumptions about people, right? We assume people are going to do what you think they're going to do.
Sure.
I promise you that the friends I brought here with me tonight, all of them, are not those people. These people are not the type of people who are going to follow their disc. They're going to go to the bridge. We have many courses where we walk over wetlands, where we interact with wetlands. A bunch of us were in Pelham, New Hampshire tonight playing. And I guarantee you somebody's disc went in the pond. And I guarantee you it was gotten out with a retriever. So I think the assumptions that people are going to trounce through these wetlands is no greater than the assumption that people are already trouncing through those wetlands. Okay. There are folks who are already making their own makeshift paths over the wetlands to use the path that they've been using for 30 years. So I think the generalization that disc golfers are a different group of people and they're going to trounce through wetlands is a overstatement of misinformation.
And thank you.
Okay.
I stand corrected. I'm going to follow up. Our wetland, this wetland in question, is basically a lot of the year a dry stream.
Yes.
So it's very difficult for folks. You are all responsible disc golfers, but I think some folks might not be as aware that a dry stream is a sensitive habitat and may indeed think that it's more convenient to just step over that dry stream than to use the bridge. That's my point.
Okay. I'm going to stop it there, and we're going to move on to the public hearing. So those who wish to speak at the public hearing, please state your name, your address, okay? And there's a couple of rules, okay? We would like you to keep your remarks to 3 minutes. 1 is better. And if the person before you has made the statement, just please say you agree, and that would be fine, so that we can move things along.
Right. How's the volume? Can everybody hear me with the microphone? Okay, Karen Bill, 95 Parnell Place here in Nashville. I'm part of the committee, and I asked to join this committee, and the very first thing that we did was develop rules. I'm a new disc golfer myself. The very first time that I went out, first of all, you don't just go out, and they don't just give you all these, discs and say, have at it. There's a program called Pros and Joes where they take a pro disc golfer and pair them up with a Joe or a Jane in my case. And they teach you everything from how to throw the disc, but the first thing they teach you is the respect of the land. There's no boombox carrying disc golfers out there, okay? The first thing is they tell you wetlands are delineated and they treat the wetlands as holy grail. You don't go in the wetlands. You can't move a rock. You can't move a branch. You can't break a dead branch off of a tree if it's in your way to make your shot. The first thing that you recognize as a new disc golfer when you go out onto the course is, oh my God, look at all these trees. How on God's green earth am I ever going to get it in the basket? There are so many trees. You might think, oh, a regular golf course is like open. This is not open. These are old growth trees. These are healthy trees. When they're hit with a disc golf, it doesn't affect them. It's like, you walking into a tree and hitting it with your elbow. It doesn't affect them. The landscape is amazing. It's beautiful. It gets you out there. It gets me out there. I fell in love with the sport. I got taught by these guys in the back, and I have to tell you that I can't wait to play at Roby Park. I live 2 miles from Roby Park. I'm a Nashua native. I've always been an environmentalist, and I've already volunteered. you know, it's a carry in, carry out. There's no trash, and let me tell you, your fellow disc golfer is gonna police that. They do. Like I said, I went to move a rock, and they're like, whoa, 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 you can't move that rock. And I'm like, seriously? You don't affect the environment. You leave it as is. And it's an amazing sport. I think you should all do a Pros and Joes. There's one in July with a business owner who's here from Union Square Disc Golf, Ryan in the back. 30 seconds. And, thank you. And they are just so incredibly respectful of the environment. This is one reason I'm so excited about it, and I want to be on the committee. And the rules are the rules, and they're listed before you even get onto the course. The rules are there. And you stop and you read them, and you obey them, because if not, these guys are the policing, okay? And it's a phenomenal sport that I think you could all fall in love with. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next.
I'd like to just for a second call attention to this map and the ones that are going kind of diagonal abut the property to the right. So I am representing that property. We are amongst the largest private owners that
Could you
abut
state
Ruby
your
Park.
name and address, please?
Christina McKinley, 6 Southgate Drive. As a place to start, suggesting as was that there are no native species, that abutting space, we see turkey, blue heron, woodpeckers, owls, beavers, raccoons, possums, porcupines, bobcat, groundhog, rabbit, deer, frogs of all types, toads of all types. That was completely inaccurate. Trees not taken out, pulled up by the roots, by the stumps. I'll be happy to send you pictures. Shortly after the big construction site was opened up, I walked the property, and I have photographs, so I'll be happy to send them to you. The wetland crossings, given that we abut and the stream goes through our property, we're very familiar with wetland, and we have many, many people that are nature walkers that go through Roby Park and end up on our property, don't have any idea where the delineation is until recently, and I finally put up signs, private, because we are already seeing that even the people who were doing the work and said, oh, there'll be no trash, well, their tie-off things were left on the ground. They clipped off trees in the saplings right in the middle rather than walk around them, I guess. Damage was already happening on our property. The out-of-bounds retrieval is obviously a ridiculous thought that someone is going to leave a disc and just walk away from it. That's not going to happen. It clearly won't happen. The last Ward 9 meeting, I brought a big bag of golf balls from Sky Meadow that go across 395 over their roof on East Dunstable and land on our property, and golfers walk across the stone wall into their property and across in East Dunstable to retrieve golf balls. To suggest that they're not going to walk into the wetland to retrieve their discs is absurd. And by the way, John Sullivan took that big bag home, so you can ask him about it. The game itself, as I've understood it, works like billiards in some ways, because they'll bounce it off of a tree and to get it to go some other direction. I've read a lot about this game, and that will damage trees. That will damage trees. In addition to that, I have yet to have ever heard someone on a Monday morning who plays golf or any other sport talk about the environment. They're interested in their score, they're interested in the game. We are eliminating the people who want to be in nature
Is time,
in order to have
I'm sorry,
this
Ms.
game.
McKinley, the time is up. Thank you. Next.
I would just ask for some courtesy, because as she was speaking, there was a lot of laughter going on, and I don't think that that is courteous to the speaker. I just wanted to put that out there. My name is Denise Mucioli. I live at 6 Midhurst, which is adjacent to Roby Park. Government and industry have a duty to prevent harm when there is credible evidence that harm is occurring or is likely to occur, even when the exact nature and full magnitude of harm is not yet proven. It's a quote from the Center for Health, Environment, and Justice. As you're considering this project, I'd like to have you keep that in the back of your mind. These are pictures of the discs that have landed up in the water. This is the Pelham took this off Pelham Facebook. These are all the discs that have landed in the water that somebody fished out. This is saran wrap put around the trees for, I'm assuming, to keep the discs from going in the water. So there's obviously a problem with discs landing in the water. Mr. Quigley didn't have the answers to some of your questions. I do. You asked about a vernal pool. According to the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, there is not a vernal pool there. However, it is an emergent wetland. An emergent wetland is the jurisdictional wetland of the New Hampshire state. So that is a state jurisdiction. Anything that gets approved here, regardless of what gets approved, has to go through the state because that emergent wetland is state jurisdiction, 40-foot buffer. Unlike Mr. Quigley, I did go through some of the water, and I did see what I believe is to be some sort of frog eggs. I don't know what type. I didn't want to put on waders, but that's also where we pulled out tennis balls, frisbees, basketballs, everything else. Mr. McLean, sorry, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. He said that, he didn't, before the delineation was done, I guess he didn't really know, he could speak for what was done before the delineation. I can tell you that the mayor was sent a letter that says that there were violations, and Ms. Fotu has agreed that there was violations. It was stopped because of my complaint. It wasn't stopped because the city voluntarily decided to stop it. It was my complaint to the New Hampshire DES that stopped it for violations. And you folks know that because you know that you had advised them to come to you if they were going to do any cutting. They did not. Let's see what else. At one point, Ms. Foto, back on 11/19/2020, she says, when we built the boat ramp at Greeley Park, we realized, wow, this could be a really great spot for not only 9 holes, but perhaps 18 holes. What happened to that idea, I don't know. I can tell you that removing all that brush, we've seen less rabbits, we've seen less deer, and various other animals. That has affected the wildlife here.
Your time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sharon Lockwood, 398 East Dunstable Road. I'm concerned about what's going to happen to this area if it's cleared even more off hours, when there are not responsible disc golf people there. There's already evidence, if you walk up and down East Dunstable Road, of a lot of trash, broken bottles, etc. And I think that you're just inviting more of that by allowing more wide trails and so forth.
Okay, thank you. You can go after, yeah.
I have my clock all set on my phone. Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. I'm in opposition of using Roby Park for a disc golf course. And I'm not opposed to disc golf, but I am sorry to see that it was placed there.
I'm sorry, could you speak up just a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah.
Let me pull this in a little. I am sorry to see that it was placed there. I wish we had taken the time to find a better location. I think engaging the neighbors in it early on was really important. My very dear friend Tracy Pappas wanted a walkthrough done with the committee, wanted the neighbors notified, and she lost that vote. She's passed away now, but she was, very active and very dear to me, and I think she was on the right track on her Board of Public Works on this issue. When I hear stories or statements made that people are going to follow the rules, use the tools, my son was a high school golf player. We bought him his golf bag. There was no ball retrieval tool. We got them because we didn't even know you were supposed to. Nobody ever said go get one. I want to go play disc golf there. I have no experience. I'm not going to buy a full equipment bag and go in there. I'm going to go with a couple discs, try to figure out how to play, watch some YouTube videos. I'd never go in with a disc retrieval tool. And quite frankly, I'm not disrespectful to wetlands at all, or those areas, but I'm not knowledgeable of where they are and where they would be. And if I threw my disc in the wrong place, I'd run really fast and get it no matter where it was, and run really fast out and hope I didn't damage anything. Not to be mean or rude, but just because I'd want to get my disc. And I think that's what people will do, especially kids. I can tell you, I have 2 sons, and they'd be running all around. And with their friends, some of their meatball friends, they'd be bouncing them off everything. You know, so it's nice to say the rules are going to be followed, everyone's going to not touch a stone or do anything, but I don't believe that. I just don't believe that's the way people play or understand, nature, and a lot of us are ignorant about nature. I go for a lot of nature walks. I stay on the trail, though. I never go off, and I'm not playing a game. I'm just out walking. So, I wish your committee would consider, Mrs. Musioli has done a lot of research, and I really appreciate citizens who invest the time to try and look at another side. She contacted the DES. She put a lot into this, and, the disc golf folks got, a full hour to present, and she comes up and gets 3 minutes, and this woman has done a lot of research. And I wish you guys would run yourselves a little more like the State House and allow a citizen person to be given 10 minutes to rebuttal or have some time, because I think she has so much more to say that's valuable. I have not been directly involved in this. I'm aware of my time. I have not been directly involved in this. This is the first time I've come out to speak, but I'm really sorry to see what happened in there. I think it was pretty devastating to people, and I think there's a whole liability issue that hasn't been addressed. I'm shocked the city insurance wants to pay for a course in there where there's so many crisscrossing trails with people around. That's shifting on these courses. So anyway, thank you for holding this hearing.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Yes, did you want to go next?
Hi, my name is Kathy Martinage. I used to live, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. I used to live right in back of Roby Park, and I used to walk Roby Park. And there weren't many people out there using the park. I think if you put it into a disc golf course, you're going to have a lot of people using the park and enjoying it. It's for all ages. It's for kids up to grandparents. The comment about the billiards, you don't take a disc and throw it in a tree to have it bounce you don't do that. You don't want to hit a tree. So that was wrong. Disc golfers are respectful to the area. I've only been playing the last few years, and we're very respectful of the area that we're in. The retriever, it's this big. You put it like this, and you just pull the disc in, and people aren't going to go walking in the puddles and trying to destroy property. They're very respectful. So I think it's a good thing. I think it'll be good for the city of Nashua. I think the park will get more use. And as far as that comment about trash and that sort of thing, when I used to live there, with all the tobogganing and up on the hill, it was a mess. It was a mess. And did anyone clean it? No, I went with my ex-husband and we cleaned it. So disc golfers, and I'll get on the committee too, I'll help to pick up the place every 3 months or whatever. I think disc golfers want to be helpful and enjoy the sport. So that's it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak?
I'd like to clarify about the billiards.
What?
I have to say
Yeah,
this because they've said
I will let rebuttal.
Please look it up. It was on a disc golf website.
Hold on. Okay.
Well, it's on disc golf.
If you have any disagreements with anything that has been said, I would prefer you to keep it until the end and then speak respectfully to each other. I'm sorry, your name and your address?
My name is Laura Cahoon, and I live at 30 Greenwood Drive. I'm here to say, number one, I really don't care about disc golf. If somebody wants to play it, fine, but not in Roby Park. City of Nashua is taking away all our green. 2 weeks ago, coming out of church, I saw a deer going across the road. People stopped. They were courteous. Coming out this week, somebody hit a baby deer. They didn't stop, they just ran it over and went. These animals have no place to go. I'd like us to leave something for our grandchildren to have as a little, little neighborhood to go and see these animals. There's a lot there. Roby Park is a gem within the Nashua city. To put a disc golf, it's almost unbelievable that anybody would even think of doing that, to ruin this beautiful park. But at this point, as I say, I have nothing against disc golf, but not in Roby Park. I'm asking you people to leave something for our grandchildren, because eventually with all these towering buildings of all this low and middle income, we're not going to have any of these parks to go around. And at this point, maybe the park is not filled today because school is still in, but during the summer, people are walking, a lot of adults walk with their animals, and I find it very funny that the disc golf says they're going to put signs up. Last time I checked, I don't think a deer can read yet, or any other animal. So, what are you going to do? You're going to kill all these animals off so that our children and our grandchildren will never see any? I'm just asking you to save Roby Park for the residents. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
How you doing? Alex McLean, 47 William Street. I started this for the youth of Nashua, for my kids. Both my children love disc golf. They've sat through many of meetings now at this point, and they've heard a lot of opposition for, against, and every time on the ride home we get, I don't understand why why everyone's so against it. The trash, the discs in the water, my 9 and 10-year-old understand it and live by it. And every round that we're out there, they know, and they brought friends and showed their friends. And this is going to be a great thing for the youth and for the kids of Nashua. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Scott Galloon, 7 Juanita Ave in Raymond.
Yeah, can you speak up just a little bit?
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that the whole wildlife, 2 weeks ago at the Pelham course where we hold our leagues, there was over 125 people there. On 2 different holes that same night, we had a bunny rabbit run right in front of us. So there being a disc golf course, adding all this extra foot traffic there, it does not affect the wildlife. I see wildlife all the time when I'm playing disc golf. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Tom O'Brien, Midhurst Road.
Yeah, can you speak up, sir? You've got an old lady sitting up here with hearing aids, so she needs a robust voice.
Well, you won't get it from me because I'm asking for reasonable accommodations due to a medical issue. I can't talk.
Okay, I got it.
So could I have my statement? Could I have somebody read it?
Yep, go ahead.
Denise Musioli, 6 Midhurst. Can you just give me one moment to see what he... Well, you can stand here. Okay. I respectfully ask the Commission to wholly disregard public comments made by non-Nashua residents because they don't hold a vote or pay taxes. The Conservation Commission's purpose is for proper utilization and protection of natural and watershed resources. The Commission is tasked with the protection, development, or better utilization of all such areas. Approving a professional 18-hole disc golf course through approximately 49 acres of prime wildlife habitat in critical wetlands is not better utilization, nor is it the path of least impact. Natural resources include animals, birds, fish, plants, stones, soils, etc. The commission is bound to not only take measures to protect the critical wetlands, but must consider all natural resources within Roby Park, from the black bear to the monarch butterfly, which is teetering on endangerment. Wildlife travels a corridor from Groton and Dunstable to Nashua, and if they're very lucky, they continue north to better habitats and less humans. Removing another, I can't figure out what this gentleman said. The 74 trees, on top of 125 already taken, and having already cleared a large amount of shrub brush with plans to remove even more. Berry bushes is not conservation, it's not protection of natural resources. Self-regulating ecosystems are communities of plants and animals that interact with each other in the non-living environment. Trees cleared from a field will destroy wildlife habitat and force them to leave the ecosystem. Further disturbances will occur within plant and animal populations that depend on these species. Shrubs are important for food and shelter, and the removal of it affects the entire food chain adversely. Wildlife will be forced into communities and across streets where their demise will be sealed by humans, thinking humans are the only species that matter.
1 minute.
We have already seen a marked decrease in rabbits, deer, and owls. To ruin a beautiful forest for a game that is supposedly inclusive is wrongful and quite frankly sickening. The city has proposed that on event days the forest will remain closed to allow disc golfers exclusive use. Everyone that enjoys the natural resources of the forest will be excluded from doing so on event day, when hundreds of disc golfers are scaring the wildlife, retrieving discs when they can find them from wetlands. There will be additional trash problems, obtrusive signage, and unsightly bridges that will likely be vandalized and tagged, citing the current obscene tagging and destruction of trees. I'm not gonna have time to read all that. There is already a 9-hole disc golf course at Greeley Park that the golfers claim isn't good enough. I maintain it is good enough if the purpose of disc golf is to get people out in fresh air and enjoy exercise. Greeley Greens can be enhanced with the Rotary Grant. This would be the path of least impact, not tearing down and disrupting a delicate ecosystem. And then there are quality nearby courses 5 miles down the road, Tingsboro, Pelham, and Amherst.
Okay.
Thank you for your consideration.
Anybody else in the room who wishes to speak?
Hi, Will Cox, 9 Missouri Drive in Nashua. I'm an 8th grade math teacher in Lawrence, Mass, and have brought probably in my 10 years at the school 70 or 80 students out with me to play disc golf for the first time. I think one of the best ways to protect our forests is to get people enjoying them, and these are city kids just like the kids in Lawrence that would be able to enjoy the park, and for many of them it was their first time in the woods. Had a blast. We had trash bags in my bag to clean up trash as we walked. That's something that's very typical for disc golfers, to really care for the area. We know how hard it is to get these courses installed, and we do our best to make sure that that area is conserved. And to echo what Alex had said, I just know this will have such a positive impact on the youth in the area and across the city, and getting them out into the woods, which is something that is not happening enough, and gives them another reason to go out and enjoy some of the great parks that our city has to offer. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else want to say anything that has not been said?
Ron LaPlante, 4 Midhurst Road, right by the Roby Park itself. One thing the Conservancy hasn't spoken about, I mean, you talked about a lot of pollution and all, talking about the Conservancy as well as all the natural resources. Here's one that hasn't been spoken about: noise. The people who live near these parks already hear quite a bit from the softball that's played there, and that's fine. The park was designed for that. You got to keep this in mind as well. Greeley Park would be a wonderful place because no one hears it, but we, the neighbors, will be able to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Good evening. My name is Janet Valuk. I live at 41 Roy Street in Nashua, and I also am a very proud member of the Rotary Club of Nashua West. We approached the proper people to figure out where this course would go. Our initial wish was denied because it was not an appropriate place. There was a lot more wetlands and stuff where we had originally was suggested that we put it. In doing some research, and I've not really been aware of what disc golf was prior to our club embracing this idea, but this is a great opportunity to get kids out of the house, off their tablets, enjoying nature, and being able to participate in an activity that is relatively inexpensive. When you look at all the other things that kids are involved with, there's a huge fee for them to play. Baseball, even sports in the high school, they need to pay for it now. This is an opportunity to go out as a family, and myself and my family, we skied. That's almost impossible for people to do now because it's so expensive. But to go out and play disc golf with my grandkids or my children, it would be a great opportunity. We have what we call the four-way test in Rotary. We say it before every meeting, and anybody who's in Rotary or has been to a meeting knows what it is. And it starts out with, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And is it beneficial for all concerned? And I really, truly believe that that four-way test can be applied to this disc golf course and what it will do for the community and the people that it will impact and the ability to use it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I would really encourage people to not take up the 3 minutes if it's just going to be a replay of what we've heard. You're welcome to come up, mention your name, and just say you agree with whatever, or you disagree with whatever.
Well, first and foremost, well, my name is Norma Bruce. My husband and I own a business across the street from Roby Park. We're very excited, hopeful that the course will be happening. First and foremost, thank you all for being here and for listening to everybody. And I just want to say that my husband and I run a lot of the activities at the Hollows in Manchester. We have a ton of wildlife. Everybody's totally respectful. In our store, we probably sell 10 to 15 of these disc golf retrievers that everyone's talking about. They are a real thing, and they do help out with everything. And what will go a long ways is if maybe these precious little areas are marked with "do not enter the water." I think the disc golfers will adhere to all of that, and I think that the youth in Nashua wants this. I already work with PALS. We put on a disc golf fundraising tournament every year in Amherst, and the kids would like to come to Nashua at their home to do it. So I hope you can get your meeting done, and you can go check out what's happening at Roby Park, and that you'll all be in favor of disc golf. Again, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name is James Gratian, 10 French Street. I just want to say I agree with the people who say that this will be great for the youth of the community. I myself am a father of a 1 and 4-year-old. I'm really looking forward to raising my kids in Nashua and having some place I can get them outdoors and actually off TV, off their tablets, and running around in the parks. They have followed me through the existing parks in the region, and they love to walk up to the little baskets, slam dunk the frisbees in, and it's adorable. I do wish they had more low-cost, cheap activities for children, because it's so hard to find activities for kids that don't have a more substantial cost to it already. And I often think that if there were more affordable, cheap opportunities like this when I was growing up, along with my sister, she wouldn't have fallen into the opioid crisis, another tally on that whole marker, and end up getting murdered in the town of Nashua, having fallen into that, not had more healthy activities to be a part of.
Okay, thank you.
That's all.
Okay, anybody else? Yes, Mr. Smart, you
I'm a
haven't
repeat
spoken
offender.
yet at the public meeting.
Yes, I,
go ahead.
As a resident of the city of Nashua, take my 3 minutes. I won't take nearly as long. 159 Searles Road. Just wanted to kind of point out a couple of things. Please follow the science. I'm a scientist. I want you to follow the science. What is right for Nashua is right for me. If you don't agree that this is a good place for a disc golf course, then don't recommend it as a good place for a disc golf course. But I'd like to bring up what I think is the real issue with the opposition in the room. The opposition in the room are mostly abutters. They don't want it in their backyard. So they've had this land, they've used this land, they've walked back there for 30 years, and I have a little bit of proof here that they don't clean up. The Sprite can is from 1989. I found this while cleaning the trails of Roby Park. I'll leave you with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Steve Abadili, 6 Pell Avenue. I have grown up in Nashua. I spent a lot of time on the trails, outdoors in Nashua, mountain biking as a teenager, continuing that on as a young adult. When I found the sport of disc golf in 2017, I was introduced to Pelham's Muldoon Park. I was introduced to the Hollows in Manchester, and throughout New England I have played approximately 30 courses, some on private property, many on public property. Very few of them pay to play, mostly up in Maine. It's a sport that engages everyone with their surroundings. It's something that I encourage everyone to check out of all ages. Groups like the Edge Charitable Disc Golf Foundation exist to engage the youth in a no-cost barrier way, in many cases, to the sport. It's something that will create healthy habits growing up, and I believe that it is something that is in the positive interests of Nashua as a community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, one more? Okay. Two more?
My name's Sean Davison, 5 Harris Street, and I started playing disc golf in 1983 and moved to New Hampshire in '85, and there were no courses in the area at all. So I was very disappointed when I moved out here. I've been playing at Pelham for quite a while now, and there's the wildlife I see there is quite astounding. I've seen pairs of pileated woodpeckers there. I've seen deer in the fields, in the fairways, that we wait for them to get out of the way, and lots of other wildlife. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Devin Greer. I live at 1 Oak Hill. I abut the disc golf course. If you were so kind to approve this project, I will respect the wetlands as your wish. That's all I want to say.
I'm sorry, you would
I
what?
will respect the wetlands as your wish.
Okay, thank you.
I know that's what you care about, so I just want to know.
Okay, seeing no other people requesting to be heard, then the public hearing will end at this point. The next step, obviously, as you've seen, we will be doing a site walk. After the site walk, we will be visiting probably at least one disc golf course to get a feel for it ourselves with wetlands, to see how the wetlands have held up. And then we will be coming back and making a decision, looking at, okay, the 10th. So we're probably talking, I'm going to just ballpark it as maybe the August meeting that we'll be making a decision. Okay, so I appreciate everybody's time. I understand, I hope you understand this is not an easy decision for any of us here. I mean, it's, you know, there's pros and cons on both sides. So we're going to get as much information as we can and make the best possible decision we can, so we appreciate that. Okay, next up will be the Blaylock Holdings, and this is in regards to the Fimbledore Mohawk Tannery sites. So is there anybody who wishes, oh, yep, yeah, you want to take a, how about if we take a 5-minute recess and just stretch our legs a little bit?
So I truncated the brief, and Tom does want to present it, so if you could log in, I'll pull it up. Thanks.
Excuse me.
What was that? It's open to the public.
I didn't know anything about this whole thing until I was talking today. Trains left the station.
Thanks for coming. Yeah, nah. This room was So, this is just.
I don't know if there was an empty chair.
Did you see that message though?
I
would say
But not with the conservation commission, so with the Board of Public Works. I think it might have been before 2021, I think it was 2020. I think it was in 21 that they settled on Roby Park. My understanding is their first location was Greeley Park, and then they were going to use Dickey Park, and now they're at Roby Park.
I've lived in the neighborhood for 37 years. I've never been to the park, so I'm gonna make a point.
Oh, definitely, definitely join us on the walk.
Yeah, I'd like to go somewhere on the walk. I don't like walking in the woods or away from the.
Yeah, oh, excellent, great. Yeah, you're welcome. All right, that's a really bad picture, but no, you can see it. I mean, I think this was a little bit unsatisfying evening.
Well, and I mean, I looked up, I think I emailed it to you.
The rules or, yeah.
Yeah, I think I sent that to you. It just talks about lots of stuff.
Yeah.
You must have totally pride yourself on that.
It is.
Oh, really? Yeah. Is it another?
Going old school, I guess. Presentation.
It's okay, it was only a month ago.
We're not going digital? You've seen it, yeah, we've been out there.
I have a little bit more questions.
Okay.
Sure. This is the first time I realized.
I'll leave it up there just in case we get a reference.
Yeah, so this time I think about it. I knew I didn't like it.
Yeah, I have such mixed feelings about this because. Okay, this is a property.
Yeah, I'll speak to that a little bit.
She's recommending.
Okay,
as
if
a
everybody's here, I'd like to
priority
reconvene
one
the meeting.
For conservation.
Oops, oh, wait, hold on, let's see, okay, we have Commissioner Whithue, we're missing Commissioner Crook. Okay. Well, that cleared out the room, huh? I feel a little lonely, you know? Okay, that's okay, we can get started. Mr. Zajac, you want to kind of give us a little synopsis and yeah, I mean, I think all of us were on the site walk, so, or except, I mean,
Commissioner
except,
McCarthy maybe
yeah, Commissioner McCarthy wasn't, but I think the rest of us were, so we have a pretty good idea of what the area looks like.
We on here? Good. Well, good evening. Madam Chair, members of the commission, for the record, my name is Tom Zajac. I'm a civil engineer with Hayner Swanson, 3 Congress Street here in Nashua. With me here tonight is some familiar faces. Michael Devon from Thorndike Development, Brendan Quigley, you know, from GOV Environmental, Lloyd Geisinger and Bernie Plant from Blaylock Holdings, as well as attorney Brad Westgate from Weiner and Bennett. So we're here tonight to reappear before you on the Mohawk Tannery redevelopment project. As you know, we appeared before you at your May meeting. 2 weeks later, we got out on site and walked the site, which I'm sure it was good for everybody to see. Interesting, challenging project. We talked about last time, we gave you a detailed presentation, and our goal was really to give you the full gist of the project, both the remediation portion, the history of the land, the redevelopment, and then kind of funnel it down to, perhaps what your specific jurisdiction and what we're asking you for here tonight as it relates to the proposed wetland impacts and the wetland buffer impacts associated with the total project. So I had submitted a letter in advance of this meeting dated June 1st that procedurally just tried to outline, because the site is located within the City of Nashua shoreland urbanized exemption, there's kind of two paths where some of the wetland and buffer areas, your recommendation will go straight to the planning board as part of the site plan application, and then some of the wetland and buffer impacts will go towards the zoning board and follow a more typical process. And the easiest way to describe that is, or explain that a little further, is the area, the wetlands along the riverbank do not have a buffer to them, do not have that 75-foot buffer on our site. And then any wetland impact associated with that, so on our plans, that would be wetland impacts B and C, those are the two smallest. That recommendation for that impact would go to the planning board, as I talked about. And then the remaining impacts, which would be the quote-unquote inland impacts that are not associated with the river, that would be wetland impacts A and D. A is the small pocket wetland over by the Tamposi property at the base of that rubble slope. Wetland D is on the southerly parcel along the proposed pedestrian connection up to Intervale. Those two wetlands, as well as all of the wetland buffer impacts, that would be part of the zoning board special exception. So I'm happy to kind of walk through those in more detail if the commission wants me to, but essentially breaking up those recommendations between those two groups. We did not make any other additional plan or application changes. So we're here tonight really to update where we're at with the project, answer any questions that you have. I know there were a couple questions specifically related to the invasive species management and how to procedurally perhaps tie that into the commission's oversight of the project. We'd be happy to talk about that in a little more detail, but we would be looking for your favorable recommendation this evening. There are many steps, many boards, local, state, federal groups that we're seeking approval from, and we'd like to continue that momentum here this summer. So at this time, that's all I had in terms of formal presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions and defer to others on the team if needed.
Anybody have any questions? Yeah, Commissioner Sarno?
I just want to clarify, you said the small wetland A, is that actually wetland C?
So it's a little, the nomenclature is a little different as you go from Brendan's
Okay, so
wetland map
Brendan's
and
C.
my wetland impact map, so.
Okay, so when you say A, you mean C?
Correct, yeah, wetland impact area A. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and
I can
I
point
wasn't
to each of
familiar with
those.
D.
Excuse me?
Impact area D?
Yep.
I don't remember that. I remember an A, B, and a C. Can you?
So impact area D is located here in the southerly portion of the site. So as we mentioned, as part of, so the way that the wetlands are labeled on Brendan's wetland map is a different number in than what we have on the, so I'm referencing the wetland impact plan that we prepared. So if you follow me here, it's wetland A, wetland B, wetland impact C, AA is here, impact area A.
And that's by the Broad, the
Yep,
Parkway.
yep.
Right, I remember that.
Then two sections, B and C. This is the area where we were discussing the invasives. This is down by the siphon area. And then wetland impact area D is that path, that gravel path and pedestrian connection we're making back up to Intervale. So for wetland impact areas, we have A, B, C, and D, and they kind of follow a counterclockwise manner.
Okay, but that was, so that was going to be impacted by a footpath?
Correct, yes. Yeah, there's kind of informal access along here. This is where the city's sewer interceptor is. So there's kind of a cart road. I know some of you walked up in there. But there is a steep grade change. So we are trying to get as tight as we can here to obviously minimize any impact. We do have a wall there and steep slopes to minimize, but we do have a slight impact into that wetland and buffer area as we work to make that pedestrian connection. Pedestrian connection, but it also will serve as maintenance access for the city down to the sewer siphon. So it'll be 12 feet wide, gravel drive. It'll be locked, a locked gate up at the end of Intervale.
Commissioner Cook?
Can you remind me along that gravel path, like immediately to the side of it, what, I know like when we walk, it's all gonna have to be cleared and
Sure.
some of it's gonna have to be filled up to a certain level and whatnot. What is it going to be revegetated along the side there? What's gonna be immediately?
So this is an existing steep slope that drops down. That's going to be left in place. And then all we're touching is really the width of that gravel drive and the shoulder. All of that will be revegetated, typically with a conservation seed mixer.
I have a question about the access road that I believe is going to come down from Intervale Street. Is that correct?
That's what we were just speaking to.
Okay,
Yep.
and so it's going to be impacting, okay, so it's going to be impacting wetland A and then part of the vernal pool?
Correct.
Is, okay. And is there any, have you thought about the possibility to move that so that it lessens those impacts? What's the topology? Is that a possibility or not?
No, I would say we looked very hard at that, and we're butting right up against that private property there. The city sewer interceptor actually almost runs right over the corner of that property. There's a piece of the city's easement that's actually on private property. And so as I described, if you're working your way, the topography is on the plan, but generally this is very steep down to that. There's a small shelf that exists there now where the interceptor was built, and then it drops again down into that wetland.
Okay,
So we're as tight as we can. As I mentioned, we've got retaining walls at that corner that we're building to keep us, as minimal impact as we can. So we did take a really hard look at that and knew there would be questions related to that. So I can certainly say we've done everything on our side from a design perspective to really minimize that impact at that location.
Commissioner Sarno, did you?
I did,
Yeah.
yes. Just to follow up on the vernal pools.
Yeah.
The documentation for vernal pool 2 shows that there were 4 wood frog egg masses found. I just wanted to clarify that is the case.
Yeah, I did, at the end of the site walk, we had the pleasure of walking up that hill, and I did remember being back there that I had intended to clarify earlier that was in fact a holdover from from reusing the form. There's only fairy shrimp in those two ponds.
Okay. Commissioner Cook, I'm sorry, did you have a follow-up? Yeah, a follow-up?
It's a new topic, really. One of the things we talked about on the site walk was the fact that you would develop an invasive species management plan for both pre and post-construction with special focus on the handling of the New Hampshire DOT type 2 invasives, so the Japanese knotweed and the Phragmites on site. So, and we agreed that these should be mapped by the wetland scientist and that remediation should occur during phase 1 of the construction process when you're dealing with the hazardous materials. I would like to see that as a stipulation. And in addition to that, I'd like the invasive species to be monitored for a period of 2 years post-construction complete, if that's a word. Because I think that knotweed and phragmites are pretty persist, and I think it would be good to keep an eye on that. In addition, I'll follow up on what Commissioner Cook mentioned. Along the bank, we'd like to see, I think you already said this, you plan to put a native seed mix there, but I would like to see a stipulation that only native species be planted along the bank, so below your retaining wall. Another thing, this project I have sort of mixed feelings about, because on the one hand, where you are clearing up a hazardous waste site. On the other hand, this site was just identified in our latest natural resources inventory as a priority 1 for conservation. So it's with very mixed feelings that I sort of ponder this. And with that said, a significant amount of wildlife habitat will be lost to this development. One of the species that will be particularly impacted, or one of the species that uses the river and nests on the river, is the osprey. I would like to propose as a stipulation that you, the developer, place an osprey nesting pole on site and a neighboring perch to be used by osprey. We know they nest on the Nashua River in Nashua. I don't know any that nest right in that area, but I think this would be kind of a small step towards preserving some habitat.
At Trader Joe's, right, in the parking lot?
Trader Joe's, absolutely, yes. If anyone's familiar with Trader Joe's, the ospreys nest on a light pole there in the parking lot. So they may use it. Not guaranteeing they will, but I did print out there's all sorts of information on design of osprey pools, nesting pools online, but I did print out one for you to take if you'd like, if it's something that
Sure.
you would consider. Then lastly, when we walked, we talked about the fact that the water was going to be collected on site, and the idea was it would all percolate down into the groundwater. But I noticed when reading the application more thoroughly that it calls for 2 outfall pipes to the river. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Sure. Do you want me to speak to all 4 of those?
Sure.
Okay. So the invasive species, we agree. There should be an invasive species best management plan practice. That would be included in the RWP. RDWP, the Removal Design Work Plan, which is essentially the remediation design package that the consultant and the design team prepares on our end. That's reviewed by EPA and DES Hazardous Waste and their team. So I know Brendan and I have spoke about this at length since the meeting, and we both feel that that's the most appropriate place for it and the place where it will be implemented best. So that would be my response to that, and we would welcome a recommendation related to that, but that's going to be part of that remedial work package that will go forward. The native seed mix and plantings along, the bank on the backside of the retaining wall or any bank that we're impacting is certainly acceptable to us, and so that's fine. In terms of conservation, I do note that, there'd be a 13-plus acre southerly part of the site that will remain in its wooded state and be conveyed to the city as part of this project. So there is a large chunk of the site that will remain in conservation. I think we also talked about the various open space and green space we have. And so if you kind of look at the site, we're more densely developed as we work our way north-south from the parkway, but we do feel like we're doing our best to keep vegetation along the bank and then certainly that 13-acre contiguous piece will be prime habitat. As part of the alteration of terrain review, we do go through New Hampshire Fish and Game screening process like any project does that's involved with an AOT or shoreline protection permit. They have reviewed the project and received the approach or commented very positively on the approach of conveying that 13-acre piece for conservation to the city. I don't know a lot about nesting poles, but we're happy to read the materials, and Brendan, if you want to speak to that at all in terms of that. So stormwater was your last question. So the plan is, stormwater is all about quality and quantity. Given that we're right by the river, we want to make sure our stormwater is treated on site and then discharged for these larger storm events, discharged in a controlled manner to the river such that we are not retaining our water and making the peak event worse. So the river will crest much less or at a later time than our site will. So we want to let that water go in a controlled manner and not contribute or exacerbate a flooding condition. So that's always the approach to stormwater near a big body of water, especially a river. So we're doing that here. We've got various recharge locations throughout the site, and then during the bigger storm events, we'll properly convey that water to reduce erosion, sedimentation from the site. In addition, the cap area, while extremely green and used for passive open space, will have grass. It's a 3.5-acre area that has an impermeable cap. So from a stormwater perspective, that runoff is coming right off of there. We do not want that water to get into the containment cell. So that's another reason why we need those discharge points to convey that clean water that comes off of the cap back into the river. Brendan, did you want to speak on the osprey nest or conservation of that southerly piece?
Yeah, so I am familiar with those. I've actually been involved with putting up one of those on a project. I'll certainly discuss that with the team. And don't get too much into the heavy wildlife biology, that there might be just as appropriate areas for nesting in the 13 acres south of the project as there would be, in other words, putting up a pole might be redundant, but simple enough to discuss for sure. And I have seen also, the one I was involved in was in the middle of the malls in Salem, and it was also on a lamppost. And when they built the project, they put up a pole and it came back. So.
Commissioner Cook, you had a question?
I would say I also appreciate the value of this project and what it can do for cleaning up the area, but I see a lot of habitat loss. So something I wanted to suggest is, if possible, like I understand that where the grassy lawn type area is, like there's some limitations in what can be done there. But if it's possible to have even kind of like a buffer strip along the edge with just like native pollinator type plants, just to help the residents and the people that will use that property like see something other than grass, like, and see the value of having some habitat there. I think that can go a long way. I'd also like to suggest some type of interpretive signage. So even like if a pollinator garden was established there, just something saying, this is a pollinator garden, what's the value of pollinators? Or if there's another space on the property where it makes sense to install some type of educational signage about, I'm not sure there is, because a lot of the trees are going to be gone, but if there's some other opportunity on the edge or something, I'd like to recommend that. And then also dog waste stations, because I think a lot more people will be, especially with the connecting path and being right along the water there. I think there's a lot of risk of people not cleaning up after their dogs. And when you have those stations, I know I have a dog, I love them, I appreciate them, it's nice. And sometimes people bag it and just leave it on the ground. And so those stations can help prevent that, even if they're trying to be responsible and don't make it all the way.
Sure. And just to clarify, that would be along the public path that would run along the river, right?
Especially there, yeah. If there's like another spot that would make sense, but yeah, I think especially right along the river there.
The reason I ask is because in that, above that cap area where the passive area, there is a provision for a fenced-in dog park there, which I was going to say is, any developer would put those dog waste stations there. So I'm just seeking clarification along the river. Okay.
And then I know there's a boat launch or like plans to have that for people. I'd like to recommend just more educational signage about invasive aquatic plants, so that people who are using that launch can be alert to not spreading from another area, bringing them in.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to underscore that one of the questions that I had, it's a beautiful area. I mean, not now, I'm not looking back, but looking forward, and it is a beautiful site. And I was hoping that any landscaping plan that was developed could keep with the rural nature. I mean, I know we're in an urban area, but it is a kind of a rugged part of the city. And so, pollinator gardens, wildflower meadows, anything where it's not, where they can add naturalness to it and at the same time habitat would be appreciated, rather than the, manicured Versailles look, that would be appreciated. Does anybody else have any other questions? Yeah, Commissioner Crook.
This might actually be a question for Dave or Matt, but in terms of these sites that have Superfund sites, that obviously this is like a big remediation project that the city is, I assume, very thankful for. If a project like yours doesn't come along, what happens to a site like this where it is on private property and it's not necessarily the city's responsibility? What is the, like, if say you didn't come along or this didn't go through, right? Like what does that mean for this environment?
We would wait for the next developer to come along, because there's no way the city is going to take on.
It's taken 40 years,
Right.
They shut down in 1984. I know Mr. Plant's been working on this for decades, as with others in this room. We've talked about the unique public-private partnership. So I think this project proposal is fairly unique, and if this didn't happen, then it could be another 40 years before somebody else comes along. So.
But so it's just a waiting game, basically. There's no responsibility for anyone other than a new developer to do anything.
Well, I mean, unless we can get somebody with deep pockets that wants to, build a, $10 million park,
No, I understand. I'm just curious from my understanding, because I know there's another
it,
place in Nashville that also is similar, so I'm just curious. I know this is a wild ask, but would you ever consider making the cap just a meadow, an open meadow, with maybe one path?
So there are various areas there. You can see the different colors. We submitted a detailed landscaping plan to the planning board, but there are various levels of vegetation where you have more natural meadow areas. Those are the light green. And then you have kind of open lawn areas as well. So it is a mix. We are, we're essentially on top of a landfill, so you've got a grass layer or a, gravel or paved walkway that has anywhere from 2 to 4 feet of cover, impermeable liner, and then all the bad stuff. So there are limitations, obviously, in terms of what we can plant over that cap in the root system. So it's kind of limited to shallow root zones. But there is a healthy mix there. You may not see that right here, but it's not just
Yeah, I'm
3
just thinking in
acres
terms
of
of the-
lawn that gets mowed twice a week.
The ecosystem that I know so many of us were maybe moved by when we walked it, thinking that how to mitigate that while also still
Yeah.
you getting the benefit of this, and obviously the city also getting the benefit
Yeah.
of this, without losing that, sort of that, like, upland meadow that's.
To me, it's a nice transition between, you've got the high-density development, kind of the core of the site. From a topographical perspective, it's kind of separated from that lower park cap area as well as the lower conservation piece, and then above that is the neighborhood. So it kind of sits down, and so naturally it's kind of in different groups. And so to me, that area along the river is a nice transitional between, the density of the development and then, of course, that southerly piece, so that if you go there to get to Mine Falls, you're a member of the public, come into the site, the fairly dense urban streetscape, you come down to the river, you park your car, you'll walk along the river walk. You may have, various kind of natural meadow pollinator mix. You're walking along the riverbank, and then, of course, you're either going to the southerly parcel or across the Mine Falls. So we do kind of have that transition.
Okay. I just have a couple
Yeah.
more follow-ups.
Do you have a follow-up?
It was, in the last meeting, there was, in terms of the Heritage Bureau's review of the site, there being 2 species of turtle and also a few plant species, I think. Brendan, you mentioned that there would be a more thorough survey once the project had been approved, I think.
Yep.
Is that the?
Yeah,
correct?
so the, there's two rare plants that came up on the data check from Natural Heritage Bureau. One is a lupin, and to be honest, I don't recall the name of the other one, but I have coordinated with them on the timing, which is essentially, right now, I've been sort of waiting to do these, so those will be underway.
And so what would, if you find wild lupin or class B, what would that look like?
So, yeah, with this, it doesn't happen frequently, but it does happen regularly that there's rare plant actually on a project within if it's not in the impact area, if we were to find it, for instance, in the southern,
Right.
there would be nothing done.
Yeah.
If it's right in the footprint of all the project, there would be likely a recommendation from Natural Heritage to excavate those plants and place them somewhere that's not being disturbed.
Okay.
I've done that at least 5 times.
Okay.
So it's, and there's a monitoring requirement usually for that. Not a project stopper
Yeah.
by any means.
Thank you. And then for Brendan, I don't know if this was in the planning department plan as well, but, I'm sorry, you're done. But in terms of lighting on the project, I know we've had similar projects, similar projects come up, and forget the, it's
Downcast,
Down lighting, yeah.
dark sky
Downcast,
compliant,
yeah.
yeah.
Is
Full
that
cutoff
included in
fixtures,
the-
yes,
in the
yeah,
plan?
yeah. Yeah, we have a mix of lighting throughout. Obviously, you want the streetscape area very well lit, parking lot areas well lit for safety. We do have some bollard lighting to assist pedestrians, kind of on the lower reaches of the site, but all that is on the plan, so it's fairly standard these days for those full cutoff fixtures and dark sky compliant, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So bird-friendly lighting, is that basically what what is part of the plan?
I'm not familiar with that
Well,
phrase, but
Commissioner
it's all
Sarno.
it's all downcast.
Yeah, right.
Full
the
cutoff fixtures. yeah.
Right, okay,
Yep.
right, exactly, which is, better for the birds.
Yep.
The, Commissioner Crook, are you finished?
I'm finished,
Yeah.
thank you.
Just one last thing I wanted to ask, since the impact is going to be to the vernal pool and that wetland area, is there any possibility that the vernal pool could be enlarged? You know, there's going to be a part of the vernal pool that's going to be impacted with the path, with the road that's coming down, correct? Because that's where that is. Any possibility that the vernal pool can be maintained at its size, but just move it over? Do you know what I mean,
In
enlarge
terms of
it? I think there's-
mitigation or replication?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's organizations like Trout Unlimited or some organizations that really have a lot of experience in recreating vernal pools in other areas. Is that any possibility that that vernal pool could be?
We've asked that question to regulators in a slightly different context when talking about mitigation.
Yeah.
And the general consensus is that it's not, certainly not the first option, because it's difficult to recreate that hydrology. You know, I suppose in this case it's possible, but I think it would really amount to more disturbance. Really just the very, very edge of that's already along what's essentially a path going up that has the sewer interceptor in it already. That being said, it is a fill, and it will be an impact. Another thing that could be done, I think, with lower hanging fruit, maybe just as easy or just as much, perhaps even more benefit, is just maybe cleaning some of the trash out of there. There's a
So
number of old
rehabilitating
tires and
the
stuff.
vernal pool? That's
Just a
existing?
general cleanup. It's kind of surprising, you know, the fairy shrimp, like, maybe this is why there's no frogs. I'm not sure. You know, it's not the cleanest looking area.
So there could be, would we call that remediation? So maybe a mitigation stipulation would be a remediation of the existing vernal pool?
Yeah, I think remediation has maybe a little bit different context, especially when there's actual remediation going on. Maybe just a cleanup. What I have in mind is going in there and picking up the trash and debris that's in there. Restoration.
Yeah. Does the Conservation Commission feel that they can make a decision tonight and take a vote? Okay. Are there any further questions? Okay. Does anybody want to make a motion? This is going to be quite a motion. Okay. I will move for a favorable, now everybody's going to have to help me with this, okay? I am going to move for a favorable recommendation with the following stipulations, okay? And the first stipulation is that remediation and construction follow the best management practices per the New Hampshire DOT document on invasive management. And I may not have all of that correct, but that's, we know the meaning, okay? I believe there was a second stipulation that the invasives be monitored and managed for 2 years. For 2 years, okay? The third stipulation would be the implementation of an osprey nesting pole and neighboring perch to be installed, and that a native seed mix be used in any areas where there will be reseeding. And did I get everything? Anybody, any other stipulations that anybody can think of?
Pollinator garden.
Pardon?
Maybe
I'm sorry, and the last stipulation was the installation of a pollinator garden and pollinator-friendly
I would say
landscaping wherever possible, and signage?
Like native
Yeah, with
plants
native
specifically,
vegetation.
And with educational
Okay.
signage, and the dog waste stations.
And you wanted, is it dog stations?
Dog waste, yeah.
Dog waste stations to be installed along the path? Is that-
Along the river.
Okay, along the river. Anything else? I think that pretty much,
I think the other thing Megan suggested was information.
oh, informational
about
signage regarding.
invasives at the
about
boat launch.
aquatic invasives at the boat landing. Right.
And then
Oh.
the last thing was the restoration of the vernal pool.
Okay, yeah, and the last one would be a cleanup and restoration of the vernal pool. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's seconded by Commissioner Woodhue. Is there any further discussion? Okay.
Just a question, would there be a way at the boat launch to have some kind of water source, a hose, basically, so that before people put their boats in, they can wash them off? Because you're carrying stuff on the bottom of your boat from the last place you were at?
We
Don't
can,
want it
we
to
can
go
certainly
further?
look, we can certainly look
Yeah,
into that.
so you want that as a stipulation, that'd be the last stipulation.
If it's possible.
Yeah, okay.
I was just going to ask, Madam Chair, if just a little bit of clarification on, I believe it was the second one about monitoring invasives. So I'd probably recommend that work, especially the work along the riverbank, will happen during the remediation portion of the project, and just maybe to clarify that piece. So the overall project may not be done till 2030, so I would think you would want to see, once that, the invasives are cleaned up during the remediation portion, 2 years thereafter,
Right.
and maybe in the areas that they were treated or
Correct.
removed.
Right, because my understanding is the remediation is going to take about 18 months, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
And
But,
then,
yeah,
and.
including the follow-up
And then
period.
Commissioner Sarna, was it your intent that from that date, 2 years? Well, there'll still be ongoing construction. So from 2 years from the time
From
the
the time-
remediation ends.
I was thinking, I guess, from the time construction, so they would do the remediation, and then there's construction along the riverbank where the invasives are. So to monitor, once that construction along the riverbank is done, 2 years after that.
So all of that
That's my
work,
thought.
the vast majority of that work will occur during the remediation, including the Riverwalk path. We will not be building the pedestrian bridge, we will not be building the kayak launch. So there will be a mix, but especially the area we talked about where the knotweed was when we were right down by the river, that's where our drainage outlet is going, so that work will take place. So I would suggest during that time, 2 years after the remediation would be the proper time, in my opinion. If you wait to the end of the project, then.
No, it would be 2 years after all the remediation work is being done along the riverbank.
Correct, yeah. I just wanted to note too, in the areas that we're treating, because we did note we've got kind of smaller spots throughout the site, so I know we wanted to focus on those areas along the riverbank. Thank you.
Okay, well, okay, yeah, so we're all set with the stipulations. We have a second. Any further comment?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just in response to Tom's last statement, so we are focusing along the riverbank, but you are dealing with knotweed throughout the site. Is that correct? You were gonna map the knotweed and have it removed?
Yeah, wherever. So what I envision is the invasive species management plan will include a map of where, at least where the Phragmites and the Japanese knotweed are, and then probably lumped together, everything else, it'd be the bittersweet and then the honeysuckle and autumn olive, which is pretty uniform across the whole area that was, that tannery operated on. there's no way to sort of parse that out. But I think we all probably agree that the most important things to target with the monitoring, the follow-up monitoring would be for regrowth of Phragmites or Japanese knotweed, and follow up, with appropriate action.
Right, but if the Japanese knotweed, any Japanese knotweed that's on the site will be removed, regardless of whether it's in a spot that will be disturbed, or maybe the whole site is being disturbed and I'm being redundant.
I was just going to say.
I think so.
Applied to any area referenced in the invasive species best management practice as identified in the remediation effort. So if we find additional areas, then, those are the areas where we're clearing that out, then that's what would be part of that monitoring period. As Brendan mentioned, we may not know every single area until we get out there, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor with several stipulations. It's seconded. If there's no further discussion, are you ready for the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion, opposed? Okay, Commissioner Crook opposes, so we have six yeas and
I
one
would
nay.
abstain.
Oh, I don't believe,
Is that an option? Then I oppose.
okay, so we have 2 in opposition, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 yeses and 2 noes. 2 nays. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time and your patience. We appreciate it. I am looking forward to this. It's going to be exciting. Okay. Next up, we have, last but not least, yes, introduce yourself, and we'll talk about the natural resources inventory.
I am Emma Rarick from NRPC, and I'm here to talk about the NRI. Last time I was here, you had a number of comments for me, and since then too, and I've done my best to edit according to those comments and incorporate that feedback. So hopefully this is enough of the way there that if there are any changes, they're just minor and I can make those after the fact.
Does anybody have any questions? I have one question, and it was a comment that I had made previous.
Okay.
You mentioned in the draft and in this one, your concerns about development around Pennachuck Pond and Pennachuck Brook. And I need to understand that because, we have part of that, I thought part of the property we owned, and we monitor it regularly. That's H-577. And then around Pennachuck Pond, that area, I believe, is owned by the Pennachuck Water, okay? And, so I didn't understand why that was of concern. And the other thing is, I didn't understand why there was the suggestion that we develop that whole area for more passive recreation.
So that primarily comes from the Envision Nashua plan, and so that's where that language comes from, the city's comprehensive plan. So that language at the beginning of the NRI is a goal that I thought was related to the NRI that came from that master plan.
Okay, and the reason I ask is because we have a former commissioner, who was very committed.
Yes.
To that, and I couldn't figure that out either, and I think maybe his comments made it into the vision.
That's what I suspect happened.
That's what I suspect.
Yep.
Okay, but there's nothing, you did not uncover anything that indicated that area would be up for grabs for development.
So there was a parcel that I don't have the name of it or the number right off the top of my head, but when I was looking at the parcels around Pennachuck Pond, there was I believe there was one that looked like it did not belong to Pennachuck and was not conserved. So there may be opportunities
So we
there.
might check, we want.
I would
we
double
want to
check that
out.
area.
Okay.
Yep, and there was also, in some of the deeds for some of the Pennachuck properties, it says, they're protected until a time that all the property owners decide maybe they're not protected, which I thought was interesting, so.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions?
I do, yes.
Yeah, Commissioner Sarno?
Just to follow up on what you were just asking, Sherry, there is one single-family house at the end of the road that goes from the Farley Road entrance, so that might be something to look at for purchase for conservation.
Okay.
The section on page 2, goal, natural areas, the action recommendation 1 is seek out public-private partnerships for funding for public access to the Pennachuck Brook corridor.
Mhm.
Personally, I think that I would prefer that we be seeking funding for protection and conservation of any land that's not already protected and conserved. And I would put that as a priority over public access.
Yep. So this was language that, again, came from the city's comprehensive plan.
I get that.
Yep.
But can we change that?
I,
Does anyone agree with me that that should be changed?
so in this section, I'm quoting from the master plan.
That's fine.
So I'm not going to change the quote, but I think that you're more than welcome to, if you want to add additional things someplace.
You can change that in the final? Or-
I'm not going to change it where it's quoted right there, but I can add in
Okay.
something to say ideally, you said,
Okay.
what conservation,
I don't actually see that it's quoted, sorry.
so it's on page 1, the
Oh, where-
2021.
Yeah, where it says the 2021 Comprehensive Master Plan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where it starts.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess,
You could say that some of these are from that, but I don't know that, we weren't directly involved in developing the comprehensive master plan.
Yeah.
And it appears to me that it's very park and recreation focused.
Mhm.
And that's fine, but this is, in my opinion, what we want to focus on is conservation.
Mhm.
So we can change that.
I can add something in. This was more about setting the stage
Yeah.
for where the
Yeah.
NRI is coming from, based on that comprehensive
Yeah.
plan. So I
Yeah, I mean,
can
that one-
add in things.
yeah, it
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
sticks out.
It seems like the
Yeah.
rest of the document, when you refer to this property,
Uh-huh.
properties, it's always about conservation and the
Yeah.
need for conserving it.
Mhm.
And just here, I think we're getting kind of a mixed message of the public access focus of the
Yeah,
the master plan.
I wish the comprehensive plan said it differently, yes.
So we don't have to quote from that, I guess, is what I'm
Could we
suggesting.
add some subheaders that make the fact that these goals
Mhm.
are coming from that master plan, just like make it more obvious to
That
the
that's where that's
reader?
coming from?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
if we keep getting hung up on
Sure.
that, I
Yeah.
think it's
Yep.
worth really trying to
Okay.
call out that section separate. And then if we do want to add it an additional statement, like there could be a different
Yeah.
subheader for
Yeah. Yep.
additional
Okay.
Conservation Commission goals or something.
I think that's a good solution.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Carol, when you're talking about conserving the land, would that completely exclude public access?
No. I'm just saying that I have no problem with public access, but when I read this, I think it's all about public access.
Yeah.
And I think.
Maybe that's where your funding comes from. So I don't want to put in a statement that excludes the funding
So,
opportunities.
when you read the original documentation on Northwest Sanctuary, the report that was done, the author is very, let's see, how can I say this? She's very concerned that increased public access will decrease the quality of the habitat for
Mhm.
the animals, et cetera, that use that space.
Mhm.
So maybe my point is, I would like our goals to reflect more conservation goals rather than public access goals. And I hear what you're saying, Deb, maybe funding does come from public access. But I don't, and this is a discussion point for the commission, I personally would like to see more emphasis on raising money for conservation. We already say in recommendation 3 that we're going to seek funding for public access, make parks accessible. So I think it's kind of covered already in a later recommendation, the public access part. So that's my.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I
I
think what you're seeing is competing goals. I mean, Imagine Nashua was the focus of people access to land.
Mhm.
Our focus is, the animals and conserving
Yeah.
first, and then how can you coexist? How can you bring people into it, activities into it? So it's just a
Mhm.
different starting
Mhm.
point, yeah. And I
Yeah,
think
and the
that's-
intent of this section was really just to say that the NRI, updating this NRI, having this NRI, begins to address some of these things from the master plan.
Mhm.
They're not necessarily laying out goals for this NRI or for the Conservation Commission.
Yeah, right. The only other thing that I have is page 8, and it's in the middle, and it's, because I'm not sure that I quite understand it, and that's, so hazardous waste generators include locations of facilities regulated under the Environmental Protection Agency's Resource Conservation and Recovery Act,
Mhm.
and are responsible for producing hazardous waste in the state of New Hampshire. So
That's a little clunky.
So do we have an organization that's responsible for producing hazardous waste? I mean, I'm not sure about that.
I can work on rewording
What would you,
that.
okay, I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah.
If we have one of those, I don't think we want them.
No.
Yeah, Commissioner Cook?
Just going back a second to the section we were just talking about,
Mhm.
I think in the last goal that's coming from the master plan,
Mhm.
for recommendation 2, it says identify high-value natural resource areas and incentivize development of those areas. So I think if we're adding a section below this of what our goals are as a commission, I would say it's something along those lines of identifying these high-value natural resource areas and protecting or considering how to protect those areas from development.
That's a good point.
To preserve
Yeah.
that natural resource value. Or like, it may be protecting from development isn't the best wording, but, consider for permanent conservation or
Yeah.
something along those lines.
Oh,
And I have just a question about the maps.
Sure.
I think we all kind of looked at it a little bit. This was like perfect timing for these two projects we were reviewing tonight. It was
Yeah.
helpful to look at these maps.
Mhm.
Do they, I guess I think we had this as a PDF, I tried like zooming in, and it gets blurry at a certain point. So
Yep.
I'm just wondering how we get to
Yeah.
use them better.
Yep, so we do have higher quality PDFs that, I've been talking to Deb about it, about how to best make that work so it's accessible, but we do
Perfect.
have higher quality
Okay.
ones.
And then last question about the maps was, I know as a commission, we talked about in the past, there's like this binder of conservation or conserved properties
Oh.
in the city that needs to be digitized.
Oh, yeah, you mean that big?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like this conservation and recreation assets map, I think is like sorely lacking, right? Because it's missing some of those parcels. How do we get to that next step of getting all those parcels added to this map? Right, I'm not off on this, right?
No,
Like
I mean,
it
I don't
is
think
missing.
that's part of.
No, I
No,
understand
right.
that.
Yeah.
But yes, I
like, I'm
think that's
wondering
a
if this is
discussion, I
is
think
this
that's a discussion
follow-on
that's.
project that
I think it-
NRPCC could help us with? Like, if we give them that binder, like, we could talk about this in the future, but
Yeah,
I'm just wondering how we scope that.
Well,
Or-
first of all, I read this tonight, and it's really excellent.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I really appreciate it, because there's a lot of meat in here that we need to talk about, and how do we, where's that as a priority, and how do we get there? You know, what do we want to do? So there's a lot in here that we could be working on for the next couple of years. Yeah, and I just think that's part of it, but you're right, that we need to have, and I think, you know, part of what I was thinking of too is maybe the Conservation Commission used to meet twice a month. We used to meet on the 1st and the 3rd. And then we stopped that because we just didn't have enough that was coming. But I think, you know, we have to go back and start thinking about how we might have a second meeting every so often, just for these discussions. Just take one thing and say, how do we want to move forward on it, you know, looking from this plan.
Yeah.
The only other thing, this is just a small, just a typo on page 2.
Okay.
If you look where it says recommendation 3 in the second section.
Yes.
Okay, I think shouldn't it be create a digital platform?
I'll double check.
Yeah. I mean, it's minor, but.
Yep.
You know, other than that and that thing, I mean, I don't have any other questions. Does anybody else? Go ahead.
Commissioner Sarno does have just a couple of other questions regarding maps.
Okay.
The map on page 21, and this may actually be just because the data source is wrong, or maybe I'm wrong. It shows the parcels, Yadiki Park, Terrell, so in the southwest section, it shows them all as current use. And I don't know, Sherry, is that is correct? I mean, these are all, not all, but much of them, many of them are already conserved.
I thought that was interesting also, because my understanding of, I mean, current use, it's basically owned by, it's privately owned, right?
I believe so.
And they have it in current use so that they get a tax
For
break.
tax, yes.
And I thought that property was
Yeah, these
the Southwest Park and.
These are all definitely owned by the city.
Yeah, these are all definitely owned by the city.
Okay, and that's why they're not in current use. Okay, yes, I'm going to follow up with our GIS.
I'm not sure.
Because I know that my understanding of the lists that we have of properties that are in current use in Nashua are very small.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll double check
Yeah,
that.
so you're right, Carol.
And then I just have one more map. What's that? We're on page 27.
27.
Sorry, it took me a minute to figure out what my notes mean. Again, in the southwest corner of the city, there's a parcel that's shown as easement.
Yes.
That parcel happens to be C-2542.
Okay.
And that is owned by the city.
Okay.
And the Society for Protection of New Hampshire Forests does have an easement on it, but it is actually owned by the city.
Okay.
According to the city's GIS, and according to everything that I believe.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to say, agree with Sherry that this is an awesome document.
Yeah.
I mean, you've really just done a fantastic job on it.
Thank you.
And I'm harping on those goals in the
Yeah.
beginning, because I think they're so inconsistent with the rest of the document. I think the rest of it, it's just spot on. And I think just the beginning where we're pulling from what the city's goals are.
Yeah.
I think they're they go in different directions.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
you did an awesome job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Deb, do we vote on this, or I mean, Emma makes some of the changes and then that's it? I mean, we're pretty much finished, right?
I think it sort of depends on on how extensive Emma thinks these changes might be, and whether you folks want to approve it now with the suggestions made to Emma tonight, or or if we want to, I mean, Emma can certainly make the changes, and I can send those pieces back to y'all so you can see it before you vote.
Yeah.
You know, as long as we don't make more changes after.
No,
Like, okay.
I think the changes are, I mean, except for, you know, some things on the map, which I agree, but I mean, I personally would not have to review it again, but I mean, if other commissioners feel differently, you know, so be it.
I would be happy to approve it. I think you understand what you're trying to communicate here?
Yeah, I think so.
So I'd be fine with that.
I think we could approve it, but there could still be some opportunity to review it. Like if the changes are made and it's sent to us, and
Sure.
then
That's a
there's
good
like
idea.
one more minor adjustment or something like that could be possible, depending on the time.
Yeah, if there's an egregious error or something, please tell me.
Like, I'm just thinking of that one goals section, really.
Yeah.
Like, if we wanted to look at that and see how you revise that, and if it looks good, then.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll move for approval of the natural resources inventory based on the changes to be made per our discussion tonight. Okay, is there a second? Okay, seconded by Commissioner Crook. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You sat through a lot.
Yes,
tonight.
thanks for hanging in there. You
know,
deserve an
but we-
award.
You know, we didn't think that we could change the agenda because then people would kind of think there was maybe something, you know, why are you doing that? So it was just better,
Yeah.
you know, you just, yeah.
Yep.
It's just better sometimes just to leave it that way.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
No, and that's fine. I learned a lot about both of those projects, so I hadn't been familiar with them, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Would people like to go home?
Maybe we should just camp out for the night.
The only thing, I would just say one thing. This Sunday, it was postponed from last Sunday. This Sunday from 1 to 2:30, the Atkinson Conservation Commission is having a walk in the forest with a forester, and it's going to be how tree cutting can improve habitat. Okay? And I thought it was very appropriate to what we're dealing with. So I've signed up for it. I was going to go last Sunday, but they decided to cancel because of the weather. So, but I mean, if anybody else wants to do that, just go onto the Atkinson Conservation Commission site. It's supposed to be an easy walk, and they'll have a forester, and we'll talk about it. Okay, if there's anything else up. Yes, Ms. Chisholm.
I do have one, I mean, I will remind you, we have not approved the minutes.
Oh, that's right. Oh, yeah.
We had 4 sets of minutes that we sort of pushed to the end so that the public didn't have to
Okay.
sit
So,
through
I'm
that.
sorry to do this. I do have an invoice for work at Southwest Trails for landscaping services from Miguel. Miguel does a couple of things for us. One, he clears the boardwalk, the 400-foot boardwalk at Buck Meadow in August. He's quoting $850 for that. And he also will be doing monthly clearing of the bittersweet at Terrell. So the total for his invoice for those 2 things, so is $3,300.
How much for the bittersweet? Oh, it's,
$950 plus $1,500, $2,450.
oh, okay, because for 2.
Because it's actually 1, 2, 3, 4,
Oh,
5 months.
Oh, okay, so he's doing it monthly. Okay, so that's reasonable, yeah. Okay, you want to make a motion?
I would make a motion to approve this expenditure of $3,300 for landscaping work, Southwest Park, Southwest Trails.
Okay. Second by Commissioner Whittier. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, so we'll go over this quickly. Okay, so we have the site walk minutes for March 13th, 2023. Does anybody have any additions or amendments, changes to it? Okay.
I don't think I was there.
Hmm?
I don't think I was there.
Okay. So you can.
There were 2 visits to 115 Shore Drive?
Yeah.
I was only at the second
Yeah,
one.
right. Yeah, okay, that was Shore Drive, right. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve and place on file the site walk minutes of March 13th, 2023?
Yes.
Okay, so moved by Commissioner Sarno, seconded?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner McCarthy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Next is the site walk visit of 115 Shore Drive, April 19th, 2023. Are there any additions or corrections or changes? Yes,
I
Commissioner?
wasn't at that one.
You were not at that, okay. Commissioner Parati?
At the bottom where it says motion to adjourn, they misspelled my last name, but it's spelled correctly for attendance at the top.
Okay. Was that in here? Say that, oh, okay. Motion to adjourn was made, and that was not you?
It was him, but
It's
his name's-
spelled incorrectly.
Oh, yeah, okay. So it should be P-I-E. Okay, okay, so we have,
And I was at the second sidewalk, Commissioner McCarthy.
Oh, you were, yeah.
And I think Maureen wasn't.
No, she wasn't.
No,
Yeah,
she
so I think
wasn't.
we just need to edit the.
no, Maureen,
Attended.
the second one was with Lee Gilman.
Right.
And she was there.
Yeah, I think she was.
Maureen?
I think so.
Wasn't Maureen
I
there?
don't think so.
I think she
No.
may have been at the first, but I don't think she was on the commission any longer at that point.
I think we drove together the first one, but I don't think she was at the second one.
Might have, yeah, maybe, okay, so delete Maureen Burke.
She was at the first one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And add.
Um,
And add Gloria.
Okay, and add Gloria. Okay, so I need a motion to approve and place on file the amended site walk minutes of April 19th, 2023.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Commissioner Cook, and seconded by Commissioner McCarthy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, the next is the 4/25/2023 working meeting. Okay, any additions or corrections? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion to approve and place on file the working meeting minutes of 4/25/23? Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Crook, and it's seconded by Commissioner Woodhue. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. And lastly, the May 2nd, 2023 NCC regular meeting. Any additions or changes? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion to approve and place on file? Okay, moved by Commissioner Sarno, seconded by Commissioner Woodhue. Are there any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, so any other business that we need to take up now? Oh,
I just
I
have.
guess Ms. Chisholm.
I just have one more thing, and this is, I'm only bringing it up now because it's timely. I wanted to give you just a super quick update on the Jackson Mills hydroelectric facility equipment replacement project. It's actually starting, Monday. So no in-water work being done until at least July 1st. We have some outstanding reports to be submitting to the wetland division at DES and the water quality division as well. So once we get those figured out, then we'll get started with in-water work, which would basically start with the installation of a cofferdam. We have a requirement with the Wetland Bureau that we will notify the local Conservation Commission of the schedule, so consider
We're
yourselves,
notified.
And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Just curiosity, have all the migrating fish, or the fish that migrate, already migrated?
Oh, this year has been horrendous for fish passage. Word on the street, word on the river is the striped bass camped out at the base of the dam in Lawrence on the Merrimack River and ate all the river herring. So we, at this point, I mean, in the past, we have, in past years, not last year, 2 years ago, we passed 5,000 fish, which for us is huge. I mean, they pass millions at other facilities, but for us, 5,000 was huge. We haven't even hit 500 this year. And we are at the point where we have requested that we discontinue our fish passage season and basically shut off the fish passage, which allows us to turn off the hydroelectric facility itself and then get started on some of the non-in-water work. But fish passage was terrible this year, absolutely atrocious. So, yeah, kind of disappointing.
In a normal year, would they already have passed through at this point?
At this point now, at the beginning of June, we would be on the definitely on the downside of how many fish. It's usually that right in the middle of May, middle to end of May, that we would see the most fish coming through, but it didn't happen this year, which was very disappointing. But
Jed, did you have a question?
I just had a question about Joyce Park. It looks like a pretty big fire there.
Oh, yeah.
And if you don't know if that requires us to do anything in terms of remediation anywhere. I'm just curious.
I hadn't heard about that.
It's about 20 feet, 20-foot radius. Like around, I don't know if you've seen it.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the beginning of your
There's a
statement.
fire at Joyce Park.
Oh, right, that woman had sent us that information.
And, yeah, so I just didn't know what how we handle, or if we just, what do we do?
Yeah. Well, we pass it over to the chair of the Land Management Committee. That's what we do. Yeah, I guess we should probably plan to go out. I mean, you know, I haven't been out to Joyce Park, and I need to walk it anyway. And
I went
actually,
there and I'm looking, I'm like, I can't find any burn here. It was at Joyce, I misread.
Yeah.
So now I know.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend just checking it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's right where the entrance, you can't miss it.
Yeah, right, but it,
Pretty big fire.
yeah.
It burned.
And that woman wants to be a steward, right? And you got that email, right?
Well, I think Jed,
Okay.
let me pass the buck here. Jed is the steward of.
I thought he was I thought he was the chair of the monitoring.
Yeah, he is, but he's also the
Oh,
manager.
you're also
of-
on the same
of-
committee, okay.
of Jo- Well, yeah, of
Okay.
Joyce, yeah. He's-
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and we really need to have a meeting about, I mean, we haven't talked about any of this stuff. I mean, in
Yeah.
terms of what we're gonna,
Yeah.
any projects. So, I don't know, I mean, would you like to have a meeting in 3 weeks? I mean, the third Tuesday?
Unfortunately, I'm on vacation. I would be in favor of attending such a meeting.
Okay, well then, why don't we think about, what about the third Tuesday of July? I mean, unless, well, we're still gonna probably, oh no, we're not, we may not have any applications. We might be able to do it at our meeting, our first meeting in July, if the agenda is pretty light. Okay.
I'm also on vacation the 3rd.
Yeah, what, you're always on vacation there?
It's like every third week.
Yay!
Vacation,
Good for
yeah.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, yeah, let me think about it, and then maybe we can work on an agenda on some of the things that we have to start planning for. Okay.
Our normal meeting is the first Tuesday of the month.
Yeah.
That would be the 4th of July.
Yeah, right, and I think we,
When
I have it-
when
I
you
have it
guys
right here.
accepted the calendar at the beginning of the year, we
Okay, so
decided on the,
Yeah.
on the 5th,
And,
and then there was
um,
another one too that had a date that we switched it to the following,
Oh,
to
yeah.
the next Wednesday.
We had it for July 3rd, we haven't made a decision, July 3rd or July 5th.
No, we did.
We did?
Yeah, I think when we accepted the,
We voted on
the
it.
calendar.
We voted on it? Oh,
Yeah.
okay, what did we vote for?
The 5th.
The 5th, okay. Okay. So our next meeting is July 5th.
Oh, okay.
Okay, which will be a Wednesday. Okay. You won't be here, Megan won't be here. Okay. Yeah, and then maybe we can talk about some of these projects.
Yeah, we
Okay.
had Boy Scouts at Lovewell yesterday, cleaning the rain garden and.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, did you arrange that?
I didn't arrange it, Kim, well.
Oh, right, oh, okay.
I
Kim Foster.
coordinated it, Kim
Yeah.
Foster.
Yeah, great. Okay, so, does anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Didn't we already do that?
No, we didn't. No, so Commissioner Cook, I think, wants to make a motion to adjourn. Okay, is there a second? Oh, Commissioner Sarno, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion, and next time I'm going to have my gavel.
Yeah.